Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to the latest episode of The Hard Compound Live. For those of you who don't know, my name's Rich and I run and operate The Hard Compound. We're a one-stop shop for all your motorsport needs on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, and these live interviews go out on our YouTube. So do search for The Hard Compound on all of those platforms. We usually put out 2 or 3 posts a day in the form of race reviews, race previews, any breaking news, such as the F1 being cancelled this weekend, which went out today. Any driver news, any new liveries, or all of that good stuff. And we cover everything from Formula One to touring cars to rallying to bikes to IndyCar, NASCAR. We try and cover it the best we can. So as I say, do give us a follow: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And there's normally a post out every morning, lunchtime, and in the evening as well. So yes, do give us a search, do give us a follow, and subscribe on YouTube. In case you haven't noticed, as I mentioned, we also do these live interviews. We've been doing these once a week for quite a while now, which is always wonderful to hear from drivers and motor racing. I don't know, celebrities, I suppose, from across the motorsport spectrum. Just to give you a quick rundown on who we've spoken to in the past. We've had the honour and the privilege of speaking to Mr. Mario Andretti and to Mr. Jackie Ickx, and we're announcing another one tomorrow as well. We've also spoken with the likes of Mr. Martin Donnelly. Just last week, we spoke with Super Sub, Mr. Roberto Moreno. We've spoken with Mark Blundell, David Brabham, Derek Warwick, Stefan Johansson, Alonso Jr., we've spoken with Scott Pruitt, Willie T. Ribbs, Ari Lyondike, Nico Prost, Karl Wendlinger, Mark Seurer, Emanuele Pero, Mika Salo, etc., etc. But if you're tuning in tonight, you might be a fan of British motorsport, particularly the British Touring Car Championship. Perhaps you've spoken to a number of those people as well, including Mr. Dick Bennett, the boss of West Surrey Racing. We've spoken with Jason Plato, Tom Chilton, Ronan Pearson recently, Dan Rowbottom. We spoke with Harry King, Chris Smiley, Steve Soper, Ivan Muller, Anthony Reid, Gabriele Tarquini, Rickard Rydell, Andy Prio, Tom Coronel, Fabrizio Giovanardi, Jerry Marney, Rob Gravitt, Matt Neal, and many, many more. So they are saved on our Facebook, our Twitter, and our YouTube channel. So do go and check those out. But don't do it just yet, because we have got another fantastic guest. Who you might be interested in hearing from if you're into your British motorsport and the touring cars. Without any further ado, we are going to, we're going to bring him in. He's been described as the Welsh wizard, which I think is wonderful. So we're going to bring him in right now. Please join me in extending a very, very warm welcome to Mr. Karl Jones.
Good evening. Thanks, Rich, and thanks to everybody out there inviting me along. What an amazing list of names there. And tonight you just got Just Jonesy.
Hey, no, it's never Just Jonesy. Absolutely not. No, you're, well, yeah, there's some people I've been wanting to try and get hold of for a while, but I thought, they won't say yes or anything like that. Yeah, sorry, I've just seen a message here that we are not showing on Facebook. I don't know if that's correct. If anyone can verify that, do let me know. But no, thank you very much, Karl, for coming on. Absolutely brilliant to speak to you again. Yeah, really appreciate you coming on. It's, you're one of the drivers that I remember watching when I was young. I'm not going to bring age into it, don't worry. When I was very young, and obviously in the RS 500 in the touring cars, but you've done so much before. So yeah, great to have you on board.
Well, thank you. I really feel privileged to be interviewed, definitely, and a little bit nervous, but yeah, I just very, very privileged to have the opportunity to start racing, because I come from the edge of the Cambrian Mountains near Lampeter in West Wales, where rallying was the big thing and still is, I guess. But I've followed the footsteps into Wendigo racing.
Fantastic. I mean, as you say, I mean, while we're on the subject of the rally world and in Wales, we do have to say big congratulations to Mr. Elfyn Evans, who won the World Rally event a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, certainly.
Which is fantastic. Obviously, son of Gwyndaf, who we're a big fan of, and obviously, while we're on the subject, we have to pass on our condolences to the family of Craig Breen, of course, after awful news recently. Yeah, just before we go any further, I just want to say hello to the folks in the comment section. If you have any questions or comments, do pop them in into the comment section. We'll see them pretty much in real time, and we'll do our very best to work them into the chat. I've just seen that we've got Mr. Jerry Marnie is in. Good evening, Jerry. Goodness me. This is very nice to see. So yeah, Oliver Taylor, Marion Speed has confirmed that we're on Facebook. That's fine. Tim Marshall, Simon Steele, so many, many others. So thank you all for tuning in. We're going to get cracking right now. Oh, it's a very nice line from Dave Jones, which I'm going to say for the end, which is a lovely thing to say. So, right. I guess we better get cracking. I mean, you've had a heck of a career, a lot to get through. You mentioned you were in like rally country. How did you first get involved in having a go yourself in motorsport?
Yeah, I did a couple of auto tests locally, but just for fun. And there was an advert in the Western Mail, which was the national newspaper, to follow in. They were looking for somebody to follow in the footsteps of Tom Price. And you could go and have a lesson at Brands Hatch. Actually, you could do the whole season, all the courses for the whole year at Brands Hatch at half price, and Western Mail was supporting it. I went along. As a schoolboy, I used to deliver milk, and he was a real car enthusiast. So we went all the way to Brands Hatch to do initial trial, which is 5 laps or so. And in an Avenger Tiger, which was probably the pretty good, cool car to go up to Brands Hatch in and back in those days. But I did the five laps. I remember on the analysis sheet, tends to drive too fast, which I thought was strange when you're driving around the racetrack, but obviously I was trying too hard. Didn't think any more of it. It's like a 300-mile round trip each way, really, almost 300 mile each way. So I thought that was it. It was great fun, and that was the end of it. But later on that year, I saw Tim Davis, who I didn't know at the time, lives quite local to me, 7 miles away. He actually won the competition. So I got in touch with Tim, and he was doing Dunlop Staff tomorrow in the following year. And I went along to most of his races. And one weekend we met up with John Webb, Brian Jones, Sid Fox, Tony Lanfranchi, and Jackie Epstein at Mallory Park. And Jackie was going to take over running the race school at Brands Hatch with a brand new fleet of Royale RP26s. And yeah, I talked him into letting me become an apprentice mechanic on the Formula Fords, and as part of my salary, I was allowed to go through the school and also do the school races in Talbot Sunbeam TIs. So yeah, a very unusual way to get into it. As I still think, probably to this day, Fluxy, I definitely know, and I was probably one of the last to get into racing with very little finance and just subsidizing my drives with teams and so on to go racing, which I don't think that happens these days, does it?
No, there's not many that sort of go in and get their hands on the spanners just to get themselves a drive. But yeah, so I guess a much simpler time in many ways, I suppose. But I don't think there's many people started their racing career being taken to a racetrack by the milkman. That's... I mean, this is one that I always throw in. We spoke with Rick Parfitt Jr., who's obviously done British touring cars, British GT, things like that. He got into motorsport racing lawnmowers with the members of Queen, which, you know, standard, isn't it? I mean, who wouldn't get racing that way? But I kind of like yours. But obviously with the distances involved, once you got involved and got in as an apprentice, I guess you would have had to have, you know, moved a bit closer to wherever the action was, or
yes, I had a regular job here in Wales, and I think I was earning £70 a week at the time. Back in 79 I moved up, and I went to work for Jackie Epstein at the race school, stuck in pit garages 4, 5 and 6. I always remember those numbers, for 6 years, so it's quite a long time there. But yeah, I went to work for £28 a week, and £35 a week, and £28 a week was my digs at Reds, just across the road from Brands Hatch. So
the famous Reds, yeah,
where Danny Sullivan, Tony Trimmer, Tom Price used to live there, before my time, this is, but there was always 6 or 7 race drivers living at Reds at the time. So it was a great atmosphere.
I remember like Danny Sullivan when he came on here a couple of years ago. He always said that he had some. He said what happened in Reds stayed in Reds. So I'm just going to skip over that in case we don't want to.
She was
open up a can of worms.
She was quite a character, redhead, feisty East End lady, but wouldn't take any nonsense at all. So it was, there was always something happening there.
Oh, an East End redhead. Do not mess with. So I mean, so you've set up. You know, I mean, obviously you're not earning a huge amount once your digs have come out and everything. Just talk about the racing in the Sunbeams. I mean, this was your first, I guess, your first real exposure to a racing series, as it were.
Yes, I think there was about 60 or 70 pupils doing these school races they had at the time, and I came second in the first year in the championship, and the very last race at Brands, they actually held it on a race meeting weekend because they were closed other than that. And it was pouring with rain, and I was racing against a New Zealander called David Cunningham. And I let him overtake me into paddock because I know he came in too fast. He'd run wide, so the plan was to pass him on the exit. But he got so sideways, got out of shape. I had to back off, and he got on the run and actually beat me in the race. I was gutted. And at the end of the championship, we tied for the championship. So about 2 months later, they give us 5 laps each in the same car, and he beat me by a second. And the prize was a free season with Tony Lanfranchi in the Playboy sponsored Volkswagen Sirocco. So it would have been great to have a season with Tony. But it wasn't to be. David Cunningham won that won the prize.
But I mean, and in the Sirocco as well. I mean, it's one of those cars that when obviously in the 80s, well, it was a bit before, but I mean, in the 80s, there was the cars that everyone wanted. It was the Audi Quattro, the VW Sirocco, Ford Capri. All the kids wanted one. But yeah, that would have been very cool. But it was, as you say, not to be, not to be. Excuse me. But the following year. Was that you ran again in the Sunbeams, and was this the year you took 5th overall? And
I think I was trying too hard. Then I had about 2 spins in the races, and I finished 5th or something in the championship, so it didn't go quite to plan.
No, sure. Just very quick. We've got Tim Marshall on YouTube. Hello, Tim. He says, "I remember seeing that Sirocco. Yes, what a car that must have been with the sponsorship as well." Also, just before we skip on, I just want to say hello to Jason Minshaw. Hello, Jason. I believe that's son of Alan. Do correct me if I'm wrong. Happy birthday to Alan today.
Happy birthday, Alan. You're a lovely man, and wish I could be sharing a drink with you tonight. Always, if I'm up near Oldham Park, I try and meet up with Jason and Alan because he's a wonderful man.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I'm going to be up at Oldham Park later on in the year. So Jason, I'm coming for you. I need to speak to you. Yes. Now, obviously, you said you might be trying too hard. Came 5th, etc. Was this the year where you had the option at the end of a season of a trip or?
Yes, it was. I think, although I worked for Jackie Epstein and the salary wasn't much, he looked after me like a father. He was a fantastic man, and I'll never forget him. A wonderful, wonderful man, and great racer himself in his day. He used to race sports cars with likes of Bob Bondurant. They shared drives together.
Wow.
But one lunchtime down the rising sun, he suggested to me, he said, it's quiet in the winter. Why don't I'll treat you to go to Brazil to see your girlfriend for 2 or 3 months. And he paused, and then he said, or you can have one of the Royale RP26s to go racing because we're going to change the fleet.
The Formula
So
Ford.
I paused for a second or two like this. So of course, I've already made my mind up. I went, I'll have the racing car.
A wise choice. A wise
A
choice.
wise choice. A wise choice.
If someone waves a car at you, racing car, you take it. And obviously that was your route into Formula Ford, I guess, wasn't it? That was
Yes. Yeah.
where
And
you went to.
we did Dunlop Staff tomorrow, which in 1981. And even to this day, it was the most competitive championship I've ever done in my life.
Really?
It was phenomenal. It was unreal. Back then, you could have up to 90 cars, and the lowest was 54 for a race weekend. They'd have 2 heats and a final.
Wow.
It was insane, and any one of 10 drivers could win that race. That's how competitive it was. You couldn't say he's going to win or he's going to win. It was just unbelievable.
That's crazy. That's how racing should be, though, isn't it? You know, big grid,
Definitely.
lots of interest, lots of people taking part.
Certainly thrown in at the deep end.
I was going to say, I mean, from going from what you'd done in the Sunbeams to that.
So my first race was at Croft, and we drove up there, Tina, myself, in a van, and we slept in the back of the van, and went out for morning. We had a practice on the Friday morning, and I'd only planned to go to lunchtime because I didn't have enough. I was running on recut tires, trying to do it all on the cheap. And about, I don't know, an hour or so before lunch, I went straight on at, I don't know what the name of the corner is, but it's a 90 right. The track was on the start was on the opposite side to where it is now.
Okay.
So it's on the opposite side. So where it is back then, it was the first right-hander. Hit the earth bank, went up in the air, landed on hit the bank, landed on a wire fence between 2 trees. And I didn't do a lot of damage. It just did one corner. And I thought, how the hell am I going to get this sorted? So I rang Alan Cornock at Royale. I said, can you send some bits up on a train? And no idea how to deal with this. And a good friend back at Brands, the late Pete Argensinger, I rang him up. He said, yeah, come on down, take a corner off my car. So we drove all the way back down to Brands, took the corner off the car, back up during the night. Yeah. Wow. And then spent Saturday. We had Saturday off, thank God, and spent Saturday repairing the car, setting it up. I came second, I think, in the heat, and almost won the final. I was alongside Neil Myers and Dougie Spencer. I think they had a wheel banging session just towards the end, and one retired with broken suspension, and Neil Myers had a radiator leaking. And another 100 yards, I would have got him. So almost won the first race.
Wow.
But I did win the second one at Brands Hatch.
Well, I think given what had gone on before to hit second and first, given what had gone on previously.
And this is how naive I was at Croft. I asked Phil Kemp, I said, what third gear are you using through a certain section? Because I was going to change the gear ratios. He went, that's fourth. So that's how naive I was. I knew the car was sliding around under the oversteer, but I didn't really know what the car was doing, to be honest.
Wow. Fantastic. I love that. Absolutely love that. Excuse me. And so, I mean, that season... Sorry, go on.
And then towards the end of the year, I wanted to do the Formula Ford Festival, which was a week before the final of the Dunlop Staff tomorrow. And Jackie wouldn't let me use the car. He would not let me use the car for the festival because, like, the championship is the most important thing.
Sure.
So going back a little, because Jackie, as I said, was like a father to me, and he was an amazing guy, and he very rarely sweared. But one what's his name? Stuart Veach. He was, because I was in the pit garages at Brands, I used to see people all the time testing and so on. And Stuart Veach came up to me and said, do you want to do a race the weekend? Because one of my drivers into it, you can have the entry. I said, yeah, sure. Because it was about 3 or 4 weeks before the Dunlop Staff tomorrow round was there. And I thought this would be good practice. Yeah. Anyway, Jackie was away on holiday. And so I did this race. Didn't actually ring him up or tell him, can I use the car to do this race. I just did it, thinking this is good experience for when I'm doing the Dunlop Staff tomorrow around there. Anyway, going through 30s on the last lap, somebody spun, and I happened to look across to the right, and next thing, Clearways is coming up so fast, and I went straight on into the barriers. Not massive damage, but damage the radiator and some wishbones or whatever. So on the Monday, that was on the Sunday, on the Monday, I get a message from Jackie to say he wants to see me after work. I walk into his office, and he goes, "Can I swear on this or not?"
Yeah, go for it.
This is a bad word. He said, "You're a cunt." I went, oh my God. For him to say that, because he never ever swore, I thought,
Drop the C-bomb, yeah.
I'm definitely in big trouble here. So I had probably the worst bollocking I ever had off him in 5 or 6 years. But because he said, "You've got to focus on this championship and don't distract from it in any way." So I can understand why he didn't want me to use the car at the Formula Ford Festival.
Sure.
So I hired this car from Bob Juggins, Abbey Farm Racing, and it was the Royale RP29. Oh my God, it was amazing. I wish I had that from the beginning of the year, because I was almost half a second quicker on Brands Hatch. So a massive difference.
Wow.
So I think I finished.
Was that on the Indy or the Grand Prix loop?
On the Indy circuit, yeah.
Half a second on the Indy.
Big chunk, massive.
That's
yeah.
rapid, yeah. Cool. That was
But
good.
I got taken out in the semi-final, but the car was going really, really well. So I decided to use that car, or we all decided to use that car for the final race of the Dunlop Staff tomorrow race at Thruxton. So I'd already tested my RP26 there, but not the RP29. And through Noble, I spun twice in qualifying. 2 big, massive high-speed spins, but I managed to put it on pole. And Bob said, "It's probably in the bump rubbers." So he cut the bump rubbers down. And so you're starting from pole thinking, please, hope it's going to be fine. And thank God it was. And I had a titanic battle with David Hunt and swapping places constantly. And I managed to win that one too.
Wow.
So I came third in the championship, but the 3 of us were between Mark Peters, myself, and Phil Kemp won it. Phil Kemp, Mark Peters, and myself. Us 3 were so close on the points at the end of the year.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that was your first single season.
Amazing championship. Yeah.
Wow. I mean,
I think now it's diluted slightly because there's too many formats, too many championships. Back then, it was Formula Ford 2000, Formula 3, and they were extremely competitive. Now it's diluted because there's lots more championships, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, which puts me in mind from just last week, we spoke to we had Mr. Moreno was on, and he was saying the same thing. Is that they need to really get more into Formula Ford. Maybe reduce the age that kids can get into Formula Ford and go racing, because it's a great way to learn the racecraft rather than going straight into F4 or GB4, things like that. Which I
agree with him 100%, because it's an amazing learning formula. I think I mentioned to you the other day with Roland Ratzenberger. He was trying to get me a drive out in Japan with touring cars, and one year he rang me up and said, "Would you like to do Formula 3000?" I said, "I can't drive a Formula 3000. He said, "If you can drive a Formula Ford quick, you can drive anything quick."
See, that needs to be made into a T-shirt, doesn't it? That slogan. It needs to be. People need to be wearing that. Oh, Roland. Yeah, God bless him. Yeah, sad loss when we lost him.
Lovely man.
Yeah, huge loss, and
so talented too.
Yeah, absolutely. I can remember seeing him in F3 a bit later, further down the line. 88, I think it was, at Brands Hatch at Silverstone, and
I think I mentioned to you. Sorry, I think I mentioned to you how I first met him at Alton Park. So when I was racing prod saloons, I literally come out to Formula Ford's prod saloons. So I went to watch. I thought I'd go and watch the qualifying. So I went to Lodge, on the inside of Lodge, and I watched this guy. He stood out way ahead of anybody else. I thought, I've got to go and shake his hand and meet this guy. And he was Roland. So that's the first time I met Roland. I went up to him and said, you looked absolutely amazing through Lodge. And yeah, later on, we ended up racing in the same championship, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we shall come to you shortly. Excuse me. But yeah, very talented guy. And I remember he stood out. Although in '88 I was only 7, so I don't know if he stood out because his name sounded like Roland Rat or because of what he did on track. I can't remember, but he stuck in my mind. Yeah, fantastic driver. I mean, just sort of fast forwarding to sort of '82 and '83. I mean, we something we always discuss on these chats is the finances involved. And you said that you did pretty much everything you did was not on a shoestring, but you weren't heavily funded. And I've got a note here that, what was it, £2,000 for the year? Was it £100 a race for the 20 rounds?
Well, even Dunlop Star tomorrow, 12 rounds all over the UK. I did it on 3,300. And Dunlop Star, Champion of Brands, I kept my car with the school cars in those pit garages, and John Webb paid for my entry fees. So I had free entry fees and free testing, but I did it on 100 quid a race. Yeah.
Wow.
20 rounds, £2,000. Jeez.
I mean, obviously there's different monies and things are worth different things these days. We know that, but that is still mighty. That is a shoestring, isn't it? That's
somebody tell us how much that's worth today. Then 1982, £2,000. Because somebody told me, no, they worked it out for the Dunlop Star tomorrow, 3,300, and it was under £12,000. But wow. It seems too cheap to me. I'd expect it to be more.
That's incredible. Yeah, it's got to be more than that. I mean, well, I think we were talking. Somebody was saying in British F4, it's something like £200,000 for for a season at least, and that's just for your basic sort of setup and everything. And you went racing on the equivalent of about 10 grand. Wow, amazing stuff.
And Tim Davis, I said, who was local, he used to. A lot of the time he'd run his own cars and that too, you know. It's you got to make the best of what you've got, I suppose, haven't you?
Oh, absolutely. There's no point breaking the bank to, was it cutting your nose off to spoil your race, whatever it's called.
The odds are in your favour if you got more in the bank to do that.
Of course, yeah, for sure. Again, which will come.
It definitely makes you more hungry. It definitely makes you more hungry as a driver. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, we had a chat a couple of weeks ago, and there was something I wanted to talk about. It was a race. I think you said it was at Brands Hatch, and it was a wet race, and you were, and you went from pole and sent a wheel over the grandstand and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I just remember you talking about that race and my jaw hitting the floor. What happened on that one?
That was so I'd spent £22,000 on the 1982 season to come second in the championship to Andy Ackley. And then they had Champion of Champions from Alton, Snetterton, Mallory maybe, and Brands. And the prize was 1,500 and 250 for this one race. And it was wet, so I'm not bragging, but I'm bloody quick in the wet. I used to be a second quicker around Brands in the wet in a Formula Ford.
Brag away.
So I thought, this is an easy one. Don't think of the money. And I started from pole, I think. Yeah, I was on pole, and not a good place to be in the wet because you're down in the dip. The other two got away. I came into Surtees, caught up with them at my speed, and had to brake and spun off down to 7th. I took my time, just picked them off gently rather than going for it like I normally did. Actually, it was a guy from St. John's that told me to calm it down. Don't go for it. Take your time. So I took my time this day, and I followed Ackley for about 3 laps and thought, right, I'm going to take him now into paddock, out of the spray. There was a back marker in front of me, and in qualifying, he's 15 seconds a lap slower. So there was no option but to turn sharp left into the barrier. And the marshal on the post, he works for Masters, the French guy. We call him Kermit, and I can't bloody remember his name, no. But he said it cracked the railway sleeper holding the barrier in half right by him. But the wheel and suspension went over the grandstand. It broke the gearbox casing, suspension, chassis, and the engine was a loaned engine from a Riga, where Patch was the famous one from Minister, and this Riga engine was their famous one, and it cracked the block, so they weren't pleased at all, to be honest.
Ouch.
But yeah, it was a mighty bang, a big, massive crash. Got some good pictures though. And Lanfranchi was there to greet me with a pint of beer, so all was okay.
Anything that ends with a pint is never a bad thing in the long run. Things can get sorted, and a pint will sort it in the short run. Happy days.
And the organisers gave me 50 quid man of the meeting. I think they felt guilty for letting this guy out there that was so slow in the race.
Yeah, getting in your way and causing you grief. No,
so yeah, it cost me £1,000 to repair it. A lot of people helped me. Bert Ray helped me with the chassis, and Bob Juggins owned the car. He supplied me with some second-hand parts and so on. So a lot of people helped me out, which is good. And you know what it's like, if people like me wouldn't be able to go racing without people like that to help and support you in these times.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And it's not just financial support. There's all kinds of support that you can get from these guys, and they're just as important as each other, of course.
Another wet race that season. I think I mentioned to you. I had a points, I think, closed in practice, and I was 15th on the grid. And another torrential wet race, and John and Angela Webb were in the hospitality suite, and John bet with Angela that I'd win the race, and halfway through the race he doubled the bet, and I actually won the race. And John said, you get a call in the week from Eddie Jordan. And Eddie rang and he said, what are you hoping to do next year? I said, well, I'd love to do Formula 3. I said, how much is it? And he goes, 80 grand. I said, oh my God, I find it hard to find 2 grand. And he said, well, are you talking to anybody? I said, the Welsh Development Agency and Welsh Tourist Board. He said, well, I'm going home to Ireland Christmas time. I'll go and have a meeting with them. I said, oh no, you're wasting your time. But I was so naive. I wasn't streetwise enough, because I found out afterwards, if Eddie found you some money and you were doing well, he'd find you the rest. And, you know, he was gifted at finding, you know, securing deals of sponsorship and that as well. So yeah, that was one of my regrets. I don't have many. There's probably only 1 or 2, and that is one of them.
Wow.
Just through being naive, not streetwise. I was always hunting and fishing up the mountains when I was a kid. Yeah.
But no, what a shame. What a shame there. But I mean, I just want to go back. Someone actually put in the comments, where are we? Andy Dawson, he said that your 2 grand back then is just over £9,000 today, which is 9 or 10 grand, which is amazing.
So because you couldn't go racing for 9 or 10 grand today, could you? What could you do with that? You couldn't. I mean, you could go racing, but you couldn't do Dunlop South tomorrow or something with it, could you?
You could go karting.
I think you couldn't do an equivalent championship in Formula Ford, could you?
No, absolutely not. That's incredible. And just backing on from that, Tom M on YouTube, he said, amazing, running on such a low budget and being so competitive really highlights what talent you have. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Another comment here, Barry Osborne. Hey, Barry Osborne, can you give away some of your antics while instructing at Brands Hatch? He's there tomorrow. We're going to come to that. We'll come to that later. Stick with us, folks. This is going to be fun. Going on. Oh, here we are. Sue Harris, he said, if only we'd all known what a legend you'd be, we'd have got you to autograph our race sheets at the BHRS at the BHR school. Hey, happy days. Brilliant. Okay. Thank you for the comments, folks. Keep them coming. Okay. Where have we got to? 83. Yes. You were almost on course for a test in a certain John Player special machine at the end of the year, weren't you? But
yeah, The John Player special machine. That was at the end of 83. I drove Champion of Brands again. This time with more backing. Tony Trimmer helped me secure it because he was run by Melchester Racing, Brian Morris and Dave Goddard and Mike Goddard even. And Tony suggested that they sponsor me. They had a hospitality suite of brands and it was good for their entertainment, their clients. So yeah, I think we got £4,500. But Ray helped with parts and repair if I damaged a chassis, and Rob Creswell run the car, and he did a fantastic job, and we won the championship. And the prize was a test in the JPS Formula One.
What a car! What a car! I mean, which is quite a prize. I mean, again, could you imagine that now? Formula 4, I'll go and drive an F1 car, go and drive the Red Bulls. I mean, it wouldn't happen.
Well, it was only a publicity stunt. It wouldn't have got me anywhere. But I had some great faxes that were actually back then from Peter Waugh. One was Paul Ricard, and the other one was at Interlagos. Oh, wow. But eventually it all got political because they changed from the DFV to the Renault turbo engine. So it all got messy and political. And so in the end, I had a few meetings with John Webb in his bungalow at Brands. And yeah, he ended up, I got 1,500 quid, I think it was. Yeah.
Which, you know,
as I said, it was only a publicity thing. But saying that, when I was in the touring car thing, would that have helped me? Yeah, maybe. You don't really know, do you?
Well, it's one of those, one of those things we'll never know, unfortunately. But yeah, obviously a shame you didn't get to have a blast in it, because cool.
Well, one of the Dunlop Starve Tomorrow boys actually got to drive it. Johnny Dumfries.
Oh, of course, yes, Johnny. Yeah, God bless him. Yeah, yes, he went in. Was it 86? Wasn't it? He got in there, and at the expense of Derek Warwick, as we all know, and and they're pulling the strings, and politics everywhere, it seems.
I think I mentioned to you that about a dozen of us meet for lunch. Even now, we had it probably a month ago, and it's the first one without Johnny being there. And of course David Hunt. But we asked Johnny. One of the boys asked Johnny. He said, "What was Senna like as a teammate?" And he said he wasn't.
Oh. But, wow, that's about as cutting as it gets, isn't it? But that was one of the things that Ayrton had. He's ruthless and did everything for himself. Wow, God, he wasn't. Ouch. Bit of a stinger. 84, the following year. I mean, again, we spoke about this. It was a bit of a tough year, wasn't it? Nothing sort of really aligned for you, did it?
That was probably my worst season ever, because I had two sponsors. KS Group were on board again for the races at Brands, and I had this Italian guy, and that all fizzled out. I had an engine and car deal. Reynard supplied the car. Riga supplied the engine, and through the one sponsor pulling out, and I was trying to do it myself. And then most people were competitive in the Reynard, but for some reason mine understeered, and I had big understeer on fast corners, and I had two big shunts, one at Knickerbrook at Alton Park and one at Clearways at Brands. So I got into £6,000 in debt, turning 60 quid a week.
Wow.
It was a rough time. And that's what I used, that £1,500 off John Webb towards that debt at that time. Did pay all my debts off, of course.
But I mean, it took a chunk out of it. But obviously, as you say,
it was so destroying, because you're too scared to actually drive the car, because you're worried about having another shunt. And one race at Brands, I put it on Paul. Yeah, I was on pole. There was oil on the track, and there was an RAC and TT race the same day, and I can't remember which one was at Brands and one at Silverstone. Some of the boys were flying up to Silverstone to do the other race. But Yeah, I had a shunt going into paddock because I thought I wanted to lead into paddock. If I led into paddock, I'd win this race.
Sure.
But I think it was Gerrit von Cowan on the outside. And, unfortunately, Pete Rogers, he was in the middle, and we tangled wheels and cars went flying everywhere. And yeah, so
And that was
wasn't a big, yeah.
that was
But
another
that was a tough year.
that was another kick in the wallet. Yeah, it's pretty which is obviously not what you need at the time. With the finances involved.
Some more good pictures though.
Who doesn't love a good picture? You got to have you've got to capture these moments. Just to,
it actually looked like a bobsleigh. It had no wheels on it.
Okay.
But saying that, I didn't have many shunts actually in my racing. Tim Harvey once made a comment. He said, "You remind me of Emanuele Pirro. Look like you're going to crash on every corner, but never do." But I didn't know if that was a compliment or not.
I think it's a compliment. You're right on the edge, pushing everything. Yeah. And being compared to Pirro is never a bad thing in my book. That's pretty cool. I mean, he's done okay at Le Mans and places like that.
Yes.
And he's a nice chap as well, lovely chap. But you got on board with Richard Asquith, which obviously led on to some time with a chap that a lot of folk will be aware of, Mr. Jerry Marshall. Obviously, a great guy to get on board with.
Yes, definitely. Again, going back to Brands, when I was based in the pit garages there was like a community living in some of the, not in the garages, but in their coaches at the back of the garages, because they'd have, I can't remember how much it was, but you'd have the pit garage, free electric, free testing. And so quite a few people lived down there. And Anthony Reid was one of the boys there at the time. But Richard Asquith was right up the far end of the pit garages, and they used to run Tony Lanfranchi's car from there. And I got to meet Richard and talk to him, and he said, "Yeah, next year we're going to be running some cars for Jerry Marshall, and would you like to join us?" And that's how that came about. Yeah.
Fantastic. Apologies. Just on the subject of Anthony Reid, it's his birthday today as well. So not only Alan Minshaw, happy birthday to Anthony as well. We love Anthony. Top man.
Happy birthday, Reedy.
Top man. He's 25 again. I think don't know how many times that is now. But no, great guy. But obviously you got on board with him, with Jerry Marshall, and racing in, for those of us who remember them, Fiat Stradas, smashing little cars. I always remember those. There was one down the road from us when I was a kid, and yeah, it always looked like it was going to fall over in the corners. So for you guys to go racing in them was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I don't. So it was quite a good experience at the time, and looking back, it was an amazing experience. Remember going to Tina's dad and saying, "I've got a question." He thought I was going to pop a question. I was saying, "I'm moving to Hemel Hempstead. Can she come with me?" And yeah, so we had to move up to Hemel Hempstead, and we worked. Jerry's workshop was in Tring, and we used to prepare probably 5 cars at least. So there was Richard, myself, and one other mechanic. So you can imagine how intense it was. We were testing midweek, racing, taking these 5 cars to races. So it was a lot of work. But I did the Uni Royal Championship. But before going on to that, Jerry said, "I got these sponsors. We're going down to Brands, and I want you to drive my Monza, 3-litre Monza." I was thinking, "God, never driven nothing like this." It was damp, greasy, and it was bonus print. They used to do some develop films and stuff.
Yeah.
And he had them on the pit wall with him there. And I went out, and I was so nervous. I come in, and he calls me in, and he goes, "You can go quicker, like 10 seconds quicker." So he's trying to impress these sponsors, and I'm cruising on. So obviously, once he told me, I was fine. But yeah, it was a bit nervous, apprehensive, driving a big 3-litre Monza rear-wheel drive on a damp, greasy track.
Oof.
But anyway, we ended up racing this Fiat Strada 130 DC. It was a good car, but nowhere near as good as a Toyota Corolla. They were rapid, and the Golf GTI, but they were good in slow, medium corners, where the Strada was good in medium to high speed corners. It was dreadful in slow corners.
Right.
And I remember at Silverstone, Jerry would turn up on race day and he wouldn't even acknowledge me because the car was so bad around the club circuit. He wouldn't acknowledge me. He was going, he's up the curbs, 17,000 revs on nothing. And like, the car was crap around there. I couldn't make it work. But we came second in the class, I think, the first year with the in the Uniroyal Championship.
That's not too bad, given that you had a car that, as you say, wasn't perhaps the
best.
It
was an amazing experience to drive and work and be with Jerry. He's a colourful character, legendary, and when you think what he's done in his racing career.
Yeah, amazing.
So very privileged to be offered a free ride and working for them at the same time. Yeah,
absolutely. And, I think if anyone knows talent in saloon cars, it's probably Jerry, isn't it? He's he knows his stuff. Jason Minshaw has just commented 100. Yeah, the Strada 130 TC. Those were the days. Happy memories.
Well, I got a little story about Jerry. We went up to Snetterton for a BMW day, and this is before the days even started. And he's already got a cigar going. His shades, those glasses that were half shades, his flat cap on, and he's driving a 635 BMW, trying to impress John Pancher-Webb, myself, and John Sheldon. So Pancher-Webb is directly behind him, going down the straight into the S's out the back there. God knows what speed it was, probably doing 135 or something down there. This is before the day started. And Pancher-Webb decides, as he's thrown it sideways into the S's, he pushes his cap over his glasses, knocks the cigar between his lap. He's trying to fight the cigar from burning his nuts, and absolutely sideways. It was hilarious because Pancho said, "What's he like on automatic pilot?" And as he pushed his cap over. I obviously was already mixing with the wrong crowd.
Yeah, things are starting to go a bit wobbly here. Fantastic. Just another story that you mentioned, actually, from, I think it was within the Stradas. I think it was with the Stradas. There's a story of Vic Lee and like Messrs Harvey and Blower in the rain. He told me a story about the rain at Snetterton and something all kicked off there. We love a story.
So that was the following season. Now we're in 86 again in the Strada. That was that championship, the Uniroyal Championship. You'd have a 500k race. You'd have the Will Hire and the championship. So round the points were ever so close because it was 4 points for a win down to 1 and 1 for fastest lap. So always close. And it was the last race of the year at Snetterton, and had a chance of winning the championship. And it was dry, and I think Vic Lee was a second quicker than me. And I thought, that's it, I've blown it. There's no way I can. If he beats me, I've lost the championship. I was absolutely distraught all day. I thought, that's the end. Literally, an hour before the race, it absolutely poured down, and I went, "Oh, brilliant! Right. This is back on." But I think it was Harvey and Blower. Blower had the biggest chance of winning the championship, but Tim and him tagged at Riches, and poor old Karl went out into the field, and I think he rolled. So I lost. He lost it. Well, I won the championship by a single point. No, I didn't win it by a point. That's not true. But I won the championship mainly because Colin went out there. Another good man that we lost. He was a great guy, really great guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're doing yourself a bit of a disservice. You won the championship. You were up there all year. Had to win races, take points. That's what it's about. And keep it out the long grass, of course.
Yeah, I've won a couple of championships by a point or two, but I've lost a few by a point or two as well. It swings both ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, swings and roundabouts, as they say. Another thing you told me about was was it the Monza, I think, and you were had a bit of an issue up at Druids at Brands, was it? And
Oh, bloody classic that was.
was it that in the
Jesus.
classic? Yeah,
That, no, I mean, it was a classic moment because Jerry was quite a fiery guy if you got on the wrong side of him. And when he got those steely eyes looking at you straight in your eyes, you know you're in deep trouble. And well, at Brands, he came in from qualifying and we were about to go out. He'd been out in the Monza and we were about to go out in the Strada. And he said, came running over. He's running over to the car. I said, take it easy at Druids. I just skidded into somebody going up to Druids into their door. There's oil on the track. Anyway, first lap out the pits, the old Strada was noisy, through the gears, bzzz, skidded straight into the gravel. I thought, oh my God, he's killed me. It's I'm in big trouble here, especially after him telling me. So I was calling the marshals over, come on, help me. I can get out of here, quick. And there's about 4 or 5 guys trying to push this car up the gravel, which was, so I said, oh, get some more, it's nearly come in. There's been about 7 or 8. Then I reckon it was 12 of them pushing there, trying to get this car out the gravel, and there's no going anywhere. And it was on the Grand Prix track. So they must have done 1 or 2 last time they stopped qualifying and actually dug me out. There's no way I was going to go anywhere because it actually sunk down. I couldn't even change gear. It was that buried in the gravel. But thank God they stopped qualifying and got me out, and I put it on pole.
Well, to avoid the oil. See,
Alan Minshew won the race. Alan
Did he
Minshew
now?
won the race. It was a titanic battle out the back, and I had about 7 cars holding them up, keeping a tight line, keeping them all up. But Alan got past. So we'll let you have that one, Alan, because it's your birthday today.
Just for today, you can have it. Happy birthday. For all those years ago. Brilliant.
Of course, I still got enough, Jerry, but it would have been worse bollocking if I hadn't got out the gravel through it.
It was just a slightly lower level of butt kicking. No, brilliant. Love it. Love that. Following year, though, obviously you were still with Richard Asquith and Jerry Marshall, but they sort of split the following year, and it seemed like it wasn't all going to go your way. But you got a major sponsor on board. I believe it was that year, wasn't it? Was when you got the guys at Duckham's involved, and so began a fantastic livery.
Before we go there, I won the Monroe Championship in that Strada for Jerry.
Ah, right. Well, that's a way to bow out, isn't it? I mean,
we won the Monroe Championship outright, and I think we won our class in the Uniroyal Championship. So it was a good year, 86 in the Strada.
Oh, great. I mean, yeah, if you can win, if you can take home 2 titles, class title and overall title, it's always a good year. I mean, and I get it feels like it was a shame that like Richard and Jerry split at that point, because obviously you'd had that success. You must have thought, okay, we're getting something going here, but then it didn't go, did it?
Definitely. And a real awkward situation, because you don't know which way to turn. They both helped me, and both helped and guided me, and you don't want to go with the other. So it was really hard decision. But we did go back down to Kent. Tina's parents live in Kent, and I was based there beforehand. So we moved down to Kent with Richard, and going back to the pit garages at Brands, I used to meet people like Ron Carnell. Ron used to always come in and have a cup of tea, and he sponsored me in small amounts in the past. But when we moved back to Kent, he sponsored the Ford Escort RS Turbo that we raced in the Uniroyal Championship.
Yeah, that was a fantastic car. I mean, I do vaguely remember it, obviously given my age. But was that, correct if I'm wrong, was that Mike Smith's old car?
Yes, it was.
That
Yeah.
was, yeah,
Actually,
radio.
yeah, it was Ilford sponsored car the year before. Yeah, and Mike won the championship in it, the Uniroyal Championship. I think he won it outright in '86. Yeah.
I mean, I think while we're on the subject of Mike, we have to just talk about him a bit. I mean, obviously, I spoke with like Jerry Marney, and you know, I'm fairly sort of pally, I guess, with Rob Gravett, who was, you know, was obviously very, very close links to Mike, which we'll come to very shortly. But obviously, he was a superstar at the time, wasn't he? Off track, but he was a lovely, lovely guy. I mean, I never met him, but everyone says how lovely Mike was.
No, Mike and Sarah are both lovely people. I enjoyed their company. Good people, really,
Yeah.
really nice people. And people didn't really give him the credit he deserved as a racer either. He was pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, you don't get to race in what he raced in without being, you know, without being very good. But obviously, the fact that he was, you know, the superstar radio DJ, that kind of overshadowed his racing career, or it, I don't know, just took something away from it perhaps, and it certainly shouldn't have done.
No, it shouldn't have.
But yeah, and also like a very sad loss when we lost him. Yeah, lovely chap. But yeah, back to the racing. Obviously, you've got this Escort, and you're going into the Uniroyal. And how much of a step up was it from the Strada up to the Escort?
Nothing really. They were both quite easy cars to drive. But the Escort was a great car, and if I could own a car, I would love to have owned that car. It just had special. Obviously, the RS 500 is a phenomenal car, but I don't know, it had some special attachment to me. I had some great times with it. And yeah, first race, I think, was at Brands on the Grand Prix track. And I think I finished 5th overall. And yeah, mixing it with some of the Cosworths. So the organisers reduced the restrictor, actually not once, but twice. So if I was older and cleverer, I would have sandbagged, but trying to tell a young racer that, it's pretty hard to do.
Yeah, so, slow down.
Yeah, it was a great car. And you know, we were up against Cosworth Mercedes and BMW M3s. And
wow.
So we're up against tough competition. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some serious machinery that year. And I mean, you mentioned, we mentioned about Rob Gravett and Cosworth and everything. You were sort of neck and neck with him for most of the season, weren't you?
Yeah, we were pretty close.
You told me this off a line, and Rob's never mentioned this, and I can't think why. I'll pass it over to you to say how it all went.
Well, we did the Will hire as well, and Patrick Watts and Chris Creswell drove with me. And in the wet qualifying, Rob came in, I think, 3 times to turn the boost up on the Sierra, because Rob and I were pipping each other, but Richard wouldn't turn the boost up because we were trying to make the car last. But we had a bit of a battle in qualifying, and I actually spun through the fast old Russell. I put 2 wheels on the curb on the right to turn in on the rumble strip, and it absolutely swapped ends. So in the dark, backwards, and I ran parallel with the barrier. Thank God I didn't hit it. But wow. So I started the Will hire on the front row with Rob. But the story you're on about is the 500k race at Brands, and Patrick and I were racing. And yeah, this was the last race of the season. And I thought, Rob's so close in the championship, and he was lapping me on the Grand Prix track. And I knew Lionel was running second to him. So what I tried to do is when he went to overtake me along bottom straight into Surtees, I tried to block him, hold him up so Lionel could have a sniff of his tail. And I actually weaved all the way down to Hawthorne, kept him behind. So you imagine the speed differential at Cosworth is a lot quicker than the Escort. I bet he was tearing his hair out. And he actually got past me into, I felt a bit guilty by now, so he actually passed me into Westfields. But the guilt soon went because I actually lunged him on the inside as well and got in front of him again into Westfields. So when I came across the start finish line, Mike Smith and all the team were waving their arms. Rod Vickery, they were all waving their arms at me.
Out of the way.
And yeah, I kept hearing this noise in the car, like a thought, no, it's all feels okay. But a few laps later, coming into Clearways, the back wheel broke, the stub axle broke, and the wheel came off.
Oh.
So I spun into the catch fence, and it didn't do any damage, just caught a slight mark on the rear quarter. So we were up in the hospitality suite, absolutely distraught, absolutely gutted. I've lost the championship. And they said, Rob, in the pits, he's got a problem. I went, there was two. I think Rob was sharing the car with maybe Mark Hales or Jerry Marnie. I can't remember now. But there was two cars, and I thought it's bound to be the other car. But it was Rob. His caliper had seized on. And so he lost 5 laps or something. And we won the championship. So from being mega distraught, it was time to party. So we certainly partied that night. So it's pretty amazing. I think I won the Monroe Championship and the Uniroyal Championship in the Escort in 2 consecutive years in 2 different cars and won them outright. So that was pretty special.
Yeah, there's not many that can say they've done that, gone from one, stepped up and gone and won it again. But yeah, Rob doesn't speak about that whenever I speak to him. I'm gonna see him at Snetterton on Sunday. I'm gonna ask him about it.
About me beating him by a point or me blocking him?
Oh, a little from column A, a little from column B. And you're saying that Rob must have been tearing his hair out. Well, he's grown it all back now, isn't he? So he's looking very sharp.
Is it real? Is it real though?
I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave that. Sorry, Rob. We love you. Excuse me. So at this stage, you've won the championship, you've won the Uniroyal, you've beaten Rob. Happy days. Were your eyes on the British Touring Car Championship at this stage, or was it just a case of just sticking with what you could stick with, or whatever the fun?
Yeah, well, Richard Asquith came from Boreham Motorsport. He used to work on the rally team and so on there, so he had good links with Ford. So during the winter, we went up and had a meeting with Peter Ashcroft. He supplied us with a shell, suspension, some running gear. I think he actually paid for the first rebuild, the first initial build on the engine as well. So big help from Peter Ashcroft, really.
Yeah.
So that was a good starting point. And we talked Ron Carnell because there was TV coverage then, which helped.
Yes.
So Duckham's were keen to get involved. And as I said about Jackie Epstein was like a father to me. Ron really looked after me over the years as well. And we were good friends up until he passed, I don't know, 7-8 years ago. Yeah. I'd still go around there for tea and stuff. Lovely guy. He's more motorbike man. He came from the motorcycle side, but loved the car racing too.
Yeah.
But genuine, lovely guy.
Yeah, lovely. And
so we had the budget.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So obviously he helped you out with the budget and with the car. And obviously at this stage, the RS 500 was the up and coming machine. I mean, obviously if anyone watched the chat with like Jerry Marnie the other week, they were quite hard to get hold of. You said, the actual cars, but they were the upcoming car. So I guess that was the car to be in, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. But again, we were doing it on a shoestring. I guess we had 55,000 the first year, and that was to build the car and run it. Wow. The car, we didn't get the car ready for the first race, but the second race was at Alton. And we went along to Boreham on the way up to Alton. and it was a wet day, and the track at Boreham is like flat pebbles, so there's very little grip anyway, in the wet, especially in the wet. And I just thinking, I was in fourth gear with like 4,000 revs, and it was wheel spinning everywhere.
Excuse me, someone's poisoned my coffee.
Sorry
about that.
Sorry.
Went down the wrong way. Sorry, folks. Sorry, you were saying Boreham, fourth. Sorry.
So yeah, it was fourth gear with 4,000 revs, and it was wheel spinning everywhere. I was thinking, how the hell am I going to drive this thing at Open Park?
Wow. Crikey! I mean,
so that was my first step into the car. You know, that was, you asked me earlier on, what was the Strada to the Escort like? There was no difference, but from the Escort to the Cosworth, that was a massive difference.
Okay.
You know, it's got like way over double horsepower, isn't it?
Wow. I mean, yeah. I mean, everyone who I've spoken to that's driven it have just sort of said what an incredible machine it was. It was a step up from anything else they'd ever, anything else they'd ever raced. But I mean, in the BTCC, I think you were in, was it 4 or 5 rounds in that first year? I guess you were just sort of getting a feel for it. I guess that was at the Escort, I can't remember. But you also had a run in one of my favourite touring cars ever, the big old Rover, the big Demon Tweaks Rover of Dennis Leach. And I remember I was at Thruxton, I think it was 88 or 87, I can't remember. And he crashed right in front of me. Yeah. And I think he just came backwards into the barriers and right in front of me, and it made me jump a bit. Not as much as it made him jump, I'm sure. But how did that little, that kind of one-off outing come to be at Alton Park?
That was That was back in 1987 when I was racing the Escort, and there was a 2-driver race at Alton, and good friend Alan Minshaw decided to support me for that race. So I managed to do this 2-driver race with Dennis, which he was a hell of a character, Dennis. The race was, well, first of all, I drove the car on the Friday, let me have 7 laps in it, because obviously Dennis was running everything on the cheap as well. He let me have 7 laps to get used to it. And I remember breaking down to the hairpin thinking, oh my God, is this thing going to stop? And then later on, Jeff Allen came past me and saw where he was braking. Obviously, the car's a lot heavier and going a lot quicker, so soon got used to that. But yeah, the race started wet, and I was telling Dennis to go on slicks, but he didn't go on slicks. And I remember telling Dave Richards, because they were running the BMW, said, I'd definitely go on slicks. It's slicks. No, and they didn't. The only guy that did, I think, was Win Percy, and he stormed it. I'm not sure if they had a problem later on, though. I can't remember. But yeah, it was definitely a slicks decision. Anyway, so when Dennis came in, he was going to say what we're going to do, it's just blah, blah, blah. But when he came in, it was mayhem. He just took over everything. He'd organized everything beforehand. But when he came in, he was one of these, he'd have to move. He actually he had a jack that lifted the front up, and he lifted it on his own. He was a big, strong lad. But where he used to sit almost in the back because he was a tall guy.
Right.
So I remember sitting in there in the seat, rushing forward to the steering wheel, but going out on slicks. So I'm driven it on slicks, cold slicks on a damp track. And it was like, I was thinking, how am I going to keep this on the track? But soon got into it. And I think we finished 6th. Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
Wow. It's not a bad process.
But yeah, quite a beast to handle, a big V8 3.5 litre.
Yeah. I just remember it sounded different as well. That's one of my very early memories of watching touring cars. It was just, God, it made a heck of a, it kind of rumbled right through you. It was, yeah, brilliant. I mean, we mentioned Alan Minshaw there in Alton Park. It's probably a coupling we shouldn't mention too much, given what happened in '88 with Frank Sittner when he went up and over the barrier. Yeah. I actually spoke to Frank, and Frank said, "Oh, it was a racing accident." Oh no, Frank, we saw your brake lights. Anyway, we'll skip over that. Just to sort of move forward, 88. That was your first season, wasn't it? In the first full season in the RS 500 in the British Touring Car Championship with the Duckham's livery. It's still one of my favourite. One of the livery. So I've just seen Jason Minshaw said it bloody wasn't a racing accident. No, I'm with you on that one, Jason. I had to style it out when I spoke with Frank, but no, I'm with you. Frank caused it. Sorry, Frank. But yeah, you went into 88, the Duckham's livery, the RS 500. It's the era that so many of us are fond of, and so many great looking machines. Did you have any sort of hopes or expectations going into that first season? Because obviously you're up against Andy Rouse, who was, on the boost, shall we say, and plenty of other great drivers, with Jerry and Graham Good and Guy Edwards and all that. Did you have any expectations or hopes going into 88?
I felt fairly confident I could do well, but looking back, our car was nothing like most of those cars out there. We ran rally suspension, so the car was sitting quite high. We couldn't get it low enough, and we couldn't get the rake right. So we suffered massive traction problems that were slow corners, especially. The engine, the way the engine worked, we were probably 50s more in 89. I'd say we were 50, 60 horsepower down. Wow. And then Birmingham Superprix had problem with the brakes, and went up to Steve. Steve Soap is a really good friend of mine, has been for a number of years. And I said, Steve, you must have different compound, because my pedal went to the floor in the pits and how to pump it out on the track, especially around Birmingham. It's not a place you want a brake issue with. So I went over to the Eggenberger truck. He said, come on over and we'll see what we got. And as I went there, he said, I thought you said they're your front brakes. I said, they are my front brakes. So we only discovered recently from Linfoot, because he's just purchased my old car back after 30 years in Italy. We had rear brakes on the front. So I think that was because of the rally suspension. We couldn't fit larger brakes on there. So I think that's what the issue there was.
Right.
And in 88, we were on Avon tyres, and they were good for a few laps, but they went off very, very quickly.
Yeah, sure. I mean, two things to...
Although we had some good results, it was incredibly frustrating at the time as well.
Oh, I'll bet, yeah. Firstly, sorry, that poison's wearing off. Let's talk about the Birmingham Superprix first, just as a general event. I mean, as I said, I spoke to Roberto Moreno, who went round it in F3000, and I spoke with Jerry and Rob and Frank and all these other guys. They've all said it was a fantastic event, and it was a real challenge, bumpy as hell, but they really loved it. How did you find the Superprix and the original Bristol Street Motors?
Yeah, I loved it. Awesome track. It's probably one of the best. Like Thruxton's my favorite track, but I would say that's close to it. It was very fast, incredibly fast, very bumpy around there.
Yeah, it was. It was a fantastic spectacle as well for us watching. I mean,
the first year we were at Birmingham, I can remember the track was just about, there was still public on it, and it was about to close soon. So I actually went round in Richard's car, and coming down from the roundabout, I was probably doing about 80, and because it was almost closing, there wasn't many people about and stuff. And I saw this arm come out the window, slowing me down. It was Chris Hodges. He says, "Slow down. There's a plain police car going around with a camera." that wouldn't have gone well, would it? But in qualifying, I think they held us on their yellows for 3 laps to learn the track. And I was coming down out the roundabout, down towards the mosque, I think it was there. And I was following Jerry Marney, funny enough, and Guy Edwards. And I was thinking, God, they're braking late. And they both spun down the escape road. This is just starting the first proper time lap. But I qualified 5th, and I thought that was pretty good. And I think I think Tom Walkinshaw was alongside me in the Holden at the time.
Oh,
And
wow.
I remember saying, I hope I get to pass him before the first corner, because that car was pretty wide.
Yeah,
But
just built wide, wasn't it? Yeah.
well, that's the race that got cancelled, and we didn't get to race there that year, which was
Yeah,
very frustrating.
Was it David Hunt? I can't remember. Someone in the F3000 punched a hole in the shop wall, didn't they? And
Yeah.
Russell Spence was lifted up, still in the car, and
Yeah. But yeah, where Dave Hunt had that shunt, I almost went off there in qualifying. The understeer towards that wall, and I dabbed the brake and just managed to get the back on enough to get me round. But it was one of those heart-stopping moments, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'll bet. I mean, one thing I've not asked anyone about is when you must have been frustrated when they were obviously clearing all the F3000 mess up, and then they said, "Oh, your race isn't happening." It must have been disappointing. Yeah, because everything up to that point had been geared up to the race, but then all of a sudden it's not happening. It must have been annoying.
Yeah, definitely was. All the build-up. You imagine the effort of everybody going there, and that was shame. Yeah. And I still think it's a shame that they stopped it, because can you imagine if they'd continued, how big that event would be today.
Oh, it could be huge. I mean, they could have even extended the track and got some bigger things going on. Who knows? Yeah, it was a fantastic event, one I never got to, but yeah, real shame it's not there anymore.
I see Jason Minshaw's comment there. Do you see it?
Yep. Is that the Karl? Do you remember at Brands GP when your turbo impeller broke and created a smoke storm and Roland flying past?
Yes, I certainly do, because it went coming out of Stirling's, and I was told by somebody, if you have a problem like that, drive it back to the pits, because the marshals have extinguishers or whatever. I wasn't sure. So I just cruised back, kept tight to the right. Everybody was slowing up except for Roland. Roland came down the outside. There's onboard footage. I'm not sure, was it with Sitner maybe, but Roland came down the outside, flat, unlifted, like screaming past in this thick fog that you couldn't see anything.
Wow. Yeah. Brilliant. Oh, we love him. Love him. Just another couple of comments actually on the RS500. Paul Linford, obviously, Mr. RS500. Welcome, Paul. He said, Andrew Bishop said it was Guy Edwards was with Roland, by the sounds of it. Anyway, Paul Linford says you'll soon be back in the original RS500 again. Oh, that's an exciting prospect, isn't it? And Jerry Money himself has said Karl did wonders with that shed he was driving. Full respect. Good man. We like that.
It is special times at Thruxton. It always went well at Thruxton. I know Thruxton well. And I think I mentioned to you when I drove for Jerry Marshall, he said, "Where's your favourite track, boy?" I said, "Brands Grand Prix and Open Park." And he went, "There for effing pussies, boy. Thruxton's a man." And I used to think, what the hell is he on about? I didn't have a clue what he's on about until I raced the Cosworth round there, and I thought, I got it. I know what you mean. And since then, Thruxton's became my favourite track in the UK. And Norway, my favourite corner, the fast left-hander, because the car will move a good 8-10 feet across the road at 140 mile an hour. It doesn't get any better than that.
That's fantastic. That's something I'd love to. Well, no, I don't think I do want to have a go at, actually. I think I'll leave it to you guys. But I mean, brings us on to Thruxton. I mean, you actually was in your second race in '88. You took second. I think was it second race. You took second there, I believe, and that's no mean feat. I mean, someone touched on it earlier on. Just going to scroll up here, and Andrew Collier mentioned it. He said, "Why were you so good at Thruxton in the RS500, giving away horsepower to Andy Rouse, Steve Soper, and Rob Gravitt? You still got." Good results there, and you said it's your favorite circuit. I mean, was it just one of those circuits that just kind of sets up well for how you want to attack?
Well, two reasons. One was I was taught the lines around there back in 1981 when I was doing Dunlop Start Tomorrow by the wonderful Ian Taylor, who we used to work for, Fluxy and myself and Bill Coombs. He was a lovely man, but Ian taught me the lines around Thruxton. And even to this day, when I come out of the complex or something, I can still hear certain things he tells me about which is, I think that's like 4 decades ago or more. It's just amazing. And I love Thruxton, absolutely love it. I think I mentioned to you, I think it was early 89. We hadn't been there from autumn to spring. And my first time lap of the day in qualifying, I put it on the front row with Rouse, got out the car, my hands were shaking. And I don't remember lap records or times or anything like that, but you remember special moments, and that was a pretty special moment.
Certainly one of them. Certainly one of them. I mean,
but before even having a good result at Thruxton, and you're going to Silverstone in 2 weeks' time, before leaving Thruxton, you're going to be 10th or 12th. So that was so frustrating at the time, incredibly frustrating.
But no, just because of the way the car was and the circuit set up and all the high speed and everything.
Yeah, the other thing, the second reason why we went well, I think, was we had that rally suspension. So we had a bit more travel on the suspension across the bumps, and I think that helped us. We didn't have the horsepower, but we had that better handling, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Just want to say, I mean, Thruxton, I think, is the only circuit I've actually driven around. It was in one of these little limited single-seater things, and and your brain.
Anything's quick around there, though.
Oh, it was something else. I mean, I've like said this before. I mean, we did a few sighting laps in this little single-seater, and they said, whatever you do, don't try and be a hero. No matter how good you think you are, don't keep it flat through church. Just lift. There's a bump. It's off camber, and And on my final lap, I just went, forget it. And I kept my boot in it. And it's a good job the camera didn't record the sound, because it was the back stepped out on this little, and I'm not a racing driver, but it is just, there's something about the circuit. It's just so fast, and it's just great fun, and it's grippy as well. It's a great
even now in the D-type, and Ben had never ever been raced there at all, and I took him a few times, only to do like a dozen laps each time before we went there, just to gain him confidence and give him pointers, and he got up to speed, within 2 or 3 times down there. And he absolutely loves it, and the D-type is mega special down there too.
Oh yes, we're definitely gonna come to the D-type very soon. I just want to touch on the 89 season, though. We sort of mentioned it briefly. What kind of changed in the car? I mean, you said you owe a debt of gratitude to Steve Soper and things like that. I mean, did he ever play around with it and gave you
Well, as I said, Steve's a good friend, and he could see, I was trying and knew what I was up against. So, Steve tried to help me a fair bit. I used to go out to see him race DTM out in Germany occasionally. And end of 88, I think it was, I said, look, Steve, can we find out what damper rates and spring rates you run? And he said, I got no idea. Eggenberger color codes everything, so I don't know what spring rates or damper rates we run. So he said, but I know who will know. He said, Klaus Ludwig, let's go and see him in his motorhome. So Klaus give us all the settings, yeah.
Oh,
fantastic.
Yeah,
so for 89, we had definitely better damper rates and spring rates.
Yeah, fantastic. And again, just getting on to the results. I mean, again, we always come back to Thruxton. I mean, you came second there in 88, second again in 1989, behind a certain Tim Harvey, who we all know. It's just one of those circuits that kind of, drivers always seem to do well at certain circuits. Some drivers. You came second behind Tim Harvey. Obviously, you told me he's got a nickname, which I like. It's fairly self-explanatory. I might pass it over to you again.
I don't know if you'll be offended by it, so I thought I'd take that out.
No. Tim will be fine. He gets all kinds of grief.
Well, he loves his cakes, don't you? So I don't know if I picked it up off Paul O'Neill or not. I just came up with it the other day, and I don't know if I've heard it from Paul O'Neill in the past, but we call him Cupcake.
No, we can blame Paul O'Neill, definitely.
Yeah, let's blame Paul O'Neill.
Cupcake, that's fairly self-explanatory, isn't it? But no, Tim's great. He's a good guy. Excuse me. But I mean, one thing I want to touch on, just like the technical side of it. I mean, you had the, you said you were down on horsepower from Andy and from Steve Soper when he competed, and the Eggenberger guys. Had another race at Brands, I believe it was that year, and you got a great launch. I remember you got a really good start, and you were up at the top, and then there was an accident at Druids, and it all kind of was for nothing in the end.
Actually, I was with Tim. I was with Tim
it.
literally 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we brought this up because I think if it wasn't for that, I could have been in the BRDC decades ago. So yeah, I started 8th on the grid, down round the outside of Paddock, round the outside of Druids, up to 5th, thinking this is going sweet. Tim Harvey and Mike Smith have their coming together at Westfields. I thought, wow, I'm 3rd on the first lap. Wow, this is going brilliantly. Next thing, they stop the race, dig them both out the gravel, put me back 8th on the grid.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't go so good the second time. Mike Newman squeezed me out at Druids. So, yeah, it didn't go so good the second time.
Frustrating. Terrible.
You made me think as well, when Gravitz had a shunt with Phil Dowsett at Thruxton.
Oh, and he bounced off the barrier and,
yeah.
almost right underneath the cameraman's nose. I remember, yeah.
I can't remember what position I was, but I was gutted that race got stopped because I was making ground.
Again at Thruxton.
Yeah.
Your favourite thing. Yeah, I do remember that. I also remember Murray Walker screaming, "That's a big one." I do remember that. That's something I remember. Rob bouncing around. What have we got here? Paul Linfoot said, yeah, Tim gets a lot of stick about cakes. Yeah. And Roger Wells. Now, this is not me. This is Roger saying this. He says, I thought Harvey was called the buffet slayer. Couldn't possibly comment. I'm going to leave that to you, Roger. Thank you. I do want to sort of, touch on, though. I think it was 89. I believe you said it was 89. You got pole at Silverstone in the final race. This is a terrific story because, as you said, you didn't have the power or the setup of the other guys. But you put it on pole at Silverstone in the last round of the season, and it was quite a performance, even if you do say so yourself.
I went out in qualifying on slicks. It was damp, well, pretty wet, but not too much standing water. So I was the only one, I think, went out on slicks. And the others came in, put slicks on. But at one time, they were giving me +4. So I was still pushing like hell, thinking it was 4 tenths, but it was 4 seconds. And then I saw +2.5, so I realized it was seconds. And bloody that cupcake bastard blocked me going into Abbey as well, which messed it probably the driest lap, I reckon. And anyway, I put it on pole, and then it rained heavy, so that was it. But it was a special moment going down to the driver's briefing. I was one of the last turning up there, and all the drivers stood up and cheered for me, which I thought was pretty cool because they realized I was the underdog and didn't have the equipment and so on. But so that was pretty cool from the other drivers. But for the race, I said I'd finish 10th, and I think I finished 9th purely because of the power and traction, I guess, but more power around there.
Yeah, especially around the Silverstone.
Yeah.
But still a lovely memory to have. That sort of recognition from your peers. Always nice. Always nice.
Especially the opening laps.
But absolutely. The first 3 or 4.
A good friend of mine, Dave Katz, used to work at Silverstone, and he was driving the pace car, safety car, but the pace car to start the race because we had a rolling start. And I told him, look, you got to give me a break. I said, these guys are going to be on me in no time, so I want every opportunity I can. I said, so just before you pull off, either indicate or dab your brake. I can't remember what it was now. But anyway, he gave me the heads up. So I was directly behind him, and so I floored the gas pedal and almost rammed him up the back.
He gave you the signal and didn't move.
Well, you can imagine lighting the touch paper of an RS500, and this Rover 827 was probably doing 50 mile or 60 mile an hour in front of me.
And you've got
So
on the berries.
Andy came round the outside of me at Woodcourt, and I tried to squeeze him on the grass. And now Rob's trying to come up the inside along the pit wall. So I moved to the right. And by the time we got into Cops, he came across. I T-bowed him in the door, pushing and shoving, and cars flying up around the outside and so on. But yeah, I didn't make it easy for them.
No,
And
nor should you.
And
Brilliant.
Mike Smith was trying to get me down Hanger Straight. I weaved down Hanger Straight and back up through Abbey to then it was a 90 left, 90 right under the bridge.
Yeah.
I was looking in the mirrors doing about 165, and I realized the corner came up a bit quick, so I had to get down the box really fast and understeer around. But yeah, I didn't make it easy for them, but yeah, it was frustrating. You know, you just can't. They just drive past you on the straight. That's all.
Yeah, I'm sure. But
it's not the way to go racing and do those type of tricks to stop people coming by. But I did come from Formula Ford, and it was pretty rough and tumble. So
yeah,
I guess
every man for himself.
Yeah.
I mean, just you again mentioned Rob. I mean, we know that for 1990, Rob and Mike put the Yokohamas on the RS 500, the track star thing. But you told me, and I didn't realise this. You'd sort of got in with Yokohama beforehand, hadn't you?
I thought they had the deal before 1990. Did they or not?
I'm not sure. I mean, he definitely won it in 90. I'm not sure. It was either 89 or 90.
I think they had it in 89.
Yeah, maybe they did. Anyway,
I think it was 89, and we did the test and Richard and I. We did the test and development for the Honda CRX Championship. And we were at Castle Combe tyre testing one day with Bridgestone and Yokohamas. And I suggested that, we suggested that Yokohama was a better tyre for wear and handling and so on. So Bert Baldwin felt he owed us a favour, and he said we'd have the Yokohama deal. But then obviously realised Rob and Mike's deal was a far better deal. They had a lot more finance behind them, and it's a better setup, so they went with them. But looking back, my best results in '89 were on Rouse's cast-off Pirellis. Should have gone for Rob and Mike's cast-off Yokohamas, maybe.
But they'd have let you have them, sure.
Maybe not.
Well,
Rouse did, but I don't know if Rob and Mike would have.
If you ask Rob now, he'll say, "Yeah, of course I would." But
yeah, now he would.
Yeah, he'd say it now, wouldn't he? Good old Rob. So that's the end of 1990. You kind of almost got involved with Vic Lee and the whole thing he was doing there, but it didn't quite come to be, did it?
No, Ron Carnell was really friendly with Colin Seeley. Don't know if you heard of him, Seeley Motorbikes, and also I think he was team manager at Brabham one season. But he was
related to Alistair Seeley, isn't he? Is he not?
No, he's not related to him.
It's a different Seeley, isn't it? It's a SCA, yeah. My mistake.
But he was a real go-getter, and he talked Ron into going equivalent to British Superbikes now. I don't know if it was called that then.
Yeah.
With a good friend of mine, Jim Moody, the bastard. So Jim and I are still great friends. I love him to bits. But they went the motorbike route instead of the touring car route. So it was a bit frustrating, because I think if I'd had that one season with Vic, because they were in the two Bugatti BMWs, weren't they?
Yeah.
I think it was Will Hoy and Jeff Allen drove, I think, that year. So they were competitive cars, and that would have been, might have got me on the touring car scene, but wasn't to be. As you said about stars aligning and so on, it was a bit tough. And Vic offered me a mega deal. It was £40,000. It was a brilliant deal.
Wow, that is a big deal at the time. But it's just again one of those things, unfortunately. But you that year you did compete in the wheel hire and the 500k race and things like that. But something that again you came up was an incident with Guy Edwards on the motorway, which made me smile.
That was in the Cosworth days again. We were testing at Donington, I think, and everybody had transporters. The only people that didn't have a transporter was us. We had a transit van and a trailer, and I can't remember was going somewhere that evening, but to get back to Brand, so it was pretty rapid on the M1 with the van and trailer. And I remember a guy coming past, and he obviously knew it wasn't Richard driving, so he gave me the big chop as he came in.
and why not? Well, he would, wouldn't he? He would. Excuse me. But you stepped away from the BTCC for 91. I've got here you went racing in the Fiesta Championship. I guess slightly cheaper to go racing in that, I assume.
Before we go there, I'd like to mention that there was a great camaraderie between the drivers in the Cosworths, and colourful characters. Dave Brodie, what a brilliant guy, love him to bits. Jerry Marney was saying, Mike Newman, Graham Good, Andy, of course, and Steve. List goes on. I'm old now, I can't remember them off the top of my head right now, but so many people. Mike and Rob, Lawrence, Sean Walker, there was lots of good people there. Bristow, great.
Some terrific names. You've basically described my introduction to the world of touring cars with all those names and yourself. Just a fantastic time, and obviously great for you guys being involved and being in the middle of it. And
I'd like to touch on another thing about Thruxton. Sorry, going on a bit.
No.
If you remember back in the day, you'd have 4 or 5 cars going up with tyre issues. I never once had a tyre issue around there, and I really believe to this day, I think the biggest thing, well, some are running quite a bit of camber, but the biggest issue is I think people go into Goodwood, the fast right-hander, too fast, slow the car down, let the car settle, don't load the car up. But I honestly believe people try and go too fast through Goodwood.
Yeah, and try and get the run onto the back. Yeah.
That's what does the tyres in.
There you go. A tip for any racers out there. Take it easy. Take it easy into Goodwood, or as easy as you can, going into Goodwood.
So Fiestas, I did 91 with Colin Stankham. He said, fancy coming up to Snetterton, have a go in a Fiesta. If you're good, and if you enjoy it, you're quick enough, the drive's yours. So we ended up, both of us actually racing around there, and his wife had to call us in because we were going so fast over driving, going off the track, through the gravel. It was out of control. So I ended up doing a season with Colin Stankham in the Fiesta, and I did not quite half a season in the Clio as well.
Yeah.
Won one race at Brands in the Clio, and the guy working on the car left, and after that we couldn't get it on the pace.
Okay.
But I think we came third in the Fiesta Championship with Colin. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. I used to have those little, there's like one make series that were around at the time. I mean, obviously there's a few around now, but I don't know, maybe it's rose tinted specs on my part, but I used to love it. I mean, you mentioned the Honda CRX thing. I remember that was I saw them in 88, I think, in the qualifying for the British Grand Prix on the Saturday.
That was super competitive championship. There was lots of quick drivers and championship winners in that series, wasn't there?
I remember it was the CRX and the Renault Alpine or the Renault Alpine. Two fantastic series. But yeah, the CRX, I remember I had it on VHS from Brands Hatch, and I just remember watching it again and again and again because it was just fantastic racing.
Patrick won it one year, didn't he? Patrick Watts
won it. I think it was probably
that was, we used to run that car at Asquith's.
Oh, did you? Okay, I had no idea. Terrific series. Just fast forwarding to 92. So you almost got on board with Andy Rouse and the pardon me, was it the Toyota? Was it? I can't remember.
No, it was Andy. Andy tried to get me in the Cosworth.
The Cosworth, sorry. It was
I think that might have been 90 for the 2 driver races. But another good friend of mine, Gary Ailes, he's not as quick as me, of course. But Gary, he was his father worked for Pete Hall, so
Right.
Gary'd always get in the car because
Yeah.
Pete was Andy's partner in the business.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, he was always had a toe in the door. Unfortunately for you, not for him, of course, and not for racing. Sorry, I'm just going to stop digging myself a hole. Sorry, Gary. But you did return. You did like a part season in the BMW.
Yeah, that was a
that,
frustrating time.
it
It
didn't
was
quite come together, did it?
no, John Clark supplied the car and supported us, and was run by Marv at Tech Speed, Marvin Humphreys. But I can't remember the engine builder, but they had so many engine issues. And Sean Walker was in the second car, and he was having the same issues. You know, those engines are bloody bomb-proof, but they had so many engine issues, and I did half the season. We didn't test. We used to turn up on race weekend, but yeah, it was the engine problem that destroyed it for us.
Yeah, sure. I mean, was that the reason that you kind of stepped away from the BTCC? I mean, I guess it was sort of.
No, obviously I wanted to continue, but you know, I couldn't see an opening, and my downfall is I'm absolutely hopeless at selling myself for you know, politics and that side of it. I won't push myself. Even today, I find it ever so hard to push myself to get drives. I'd love to do more historic racing and so on, but it's not in my nature to push. So yeah, I find that ever so hard.
Yeah, some people are good at sort of just, you know, not kind of worrying about anyone else. They just sort of look after themselves and really determined with it. And as you say, some people aren't kind of built that way. I'm not too pushy, I don't think. Maybe I should be, but yeah, I mean, it was a shame. I mean, do you kind of wish you'd stuck around for the dawn of the super touring kind of era, or?
Yeah, that would have been nice.
There was a bit
Definitely.
too much going on.
No, that would have been nice to do. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah,
but I still think the RS 500 was the best era of touring cars. That's for sure, because they were phenomenal cars to drive.
Yeah. I agree, and I always get shouted down for this. Everyone says, "No, super touring and the Mondeo and the Nissan Primera and all that." I mean, fantastic cars, but nah, it's RS 500 and the M3 for me. They're the two. And also Mike O'Brien in the Holden Commodore. I used to love that, the Autoglass one. That was a good car.
Yeah.
It sounded good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and just while we're on that subject, if anyone's going to the Super Touring Power event at Brands Hatch, if you don't already know about it, happening first weekend in July, it's going to be great. It's going to be a good one. Andrew Bishop, Andrew Bishop has commented, and I believe it was him who said it was the Yokos on the 89 car. No, that was Andrew Collier. It was the 89 tracks that I had the Yokos. Andrew Bishop, Colin Turkington and Gordon Shedden drove in the Fiesta Championship. Love those one-make championship categories. Here, Andrew. Fully agree that. And Andrew Edwards has just said RS 500 over Super Touring every day. You are welcome to come back, Andrew. You're a good man. So yeah, you kind of stepped away from the BTCC and things like that. But you, again, was it back into the Fiestas and the Clios, and those opportunities that came up at the time?
Yes. Yeah. What was that? Yeah, Clios. No, 90. What was that? 91, 92, 93. I did the RS 2000 Rally Sports Series.
Oh yeah, I enjoyed this. Yeah.
So yeah, that was pretty cool. There was 4 or 5 good rally drivers: Ian Dollison, Steve Hendy, Ian Gwynn, Ian Goff, and another guy, I don't recall his name right now. But on the racetrack, I used to whop them big style. But I used to wind them up, say I'm going to beat them at a rally, and didn't think I would. But I was running second in the first rally we did at Imber. But we had a slight off, only small damaged wishbone, and towards the end, so we didn't finish. But I did beat them at Otterburn.
Oh,
and
nice.
quite some time afterwards, Dale Welling said, "What's it like? How are you getting on with that rally?" And I said, "Every time I go out, I hit something." I said, "But not massively, small damage." But I said, "The only one I've won was Otterburn." And he said, "Don't want to go there, boy. That's effing dangerous." But it's a little like Epping, which is just up the road from here. But I've never driven at Epping. But yeah,
brilliant.
I did enjoy it.
No, fantastic. I mean, I always love a bit of rally, but I'm just going to backtrack. I've just seen a couple of comments from from our good friend Jerry, Jerry Marnie. Good evening again, Jerry. I'm not going to use the word, but I'm going to use a rhyming rugby term here. He said Mike O'Brien was a flanker, and you can quote me. Paul Linford said, "Don't hold back, Jerry." I've got no idea what the issue is with Mike O'Brien, but we're going to park it there. But I only said the car looked cool. That was it. I don't know Mike at all. Thank you, Jerry. I think I got out of that one just okay. But yeah, so I mean, what car were you in the rally sport? I've got here. Was it the RS200?
Yeah, an RS2000.
RS2. Sorry,
not the Mark II. It was a 93 model. Yeah.
Oh, still a good car though. Must have been.
They were fairly basic, but that was run cheaply. Again, we'd I think run back then. They run the dealership run the cars, so it was just volunteers, and yeah, it was a good little championship. Stuart McCrudden run. Yeah,
nice one. We spoke before. You had the opportunity to go up to the Circuit of Ireland and do an event up there. Was that an opportunity that came up on the back of what you were doing in the rallying side of things?
Yeah, that was part of the championship, but there was good prize money, and they asked me if they want to go to Circuit of Ireland. It was quite an expensive event to do, and they'd want to use my prize money to run the car for that event. So I said, no, I'll take the prize money. Looking back, I should have done the event because it's an awesome event. And there was a chance of winning a brand new car because I came second to Ian Gwynn, but I took the money instead.
Yeah, you can't always say no to money. I mean, you'd already said no to a trip to Brazil, so you could take the money sometimes. Obviously, thereafter you went into the Fiesta Championship and on into the Eurocars series, which I think some people will remember. Am I right in saying that you got the Duckham's sponsorship back on board?
Definitely.
Was that an awkward thing after what had happened before, or was it all very amicable?
No, we were very good friends. Ron and I, as I said, we're still friends till he passed away about 7-8 years ago. No, he's a really good guy, and no, we did the Eurocars, but the Eurocar Championship was the worst thing I ever did in my life. It was horrific. There was like one rule for the hot rod boys and one rule for the racers, so I didn't enjoy it at all. And the team running the car, we had handling problems, especially in the wet. I love the wet, and yeah, I had a few wins, but the car used to break down more often than not. I won the last race at Brands at the Formula Ford Festival up against Kevin Clark and Phil White. Oh, that's where this is going. Phil White, one of the hardest guys I ever raced against, teaching me some hot rod driving tricks, like trying to take the steering wheel out of your hand at Druids, and a paddock. He'd come up in the wet, he'd push you up onto the curbing, thinking, I was going, what's he up to? And yeah, so you can get the power on before him. So I soon twigged that and gave him a tap in the rear quarter and got past him. But and we never spoke to each other. All year we used to walk past each other and wouldn't even acknowledge each other. But as at the end, the last race of the year at the festival, same thing, walked past as we normally do, and I turned around, tapped him on the shoulder and said, thanks for teaching me some new tricks. And he said, they weren't all good ones, though, were they? He was one of he was a hard racer.
Yeah. Now, see, the tricks don't always have to be good ones. You can be underhanded.
Yeah, that was naughty. Take the wheel out.
Excuse me. There's a great line actually that you gave me a while ago. I mean, when you get up to a certain level, and you said this was the issue, and it was a great line that you said to me, which I've been thinking about. It said that the car decides where it's going to finish once you get to a certain level, and it kind of alludes to the fact that sometimes you can be, as you know, the most talented driver on the grid, but if you don't have the car, then you know, then you can only go and get so far. I mean, was that something you found?
Yeah,
At that time?
most definitely. I think I told you I was out in the States with one of my friends in California, and it's amazing our career went. We had so many similar things along the way, partly, not all of it, but partly. And it was in his workshop, and I said, "That's a lot." He's got a big poster on his wall at the garage wall. I said, "That's the last time I won a championship." And he said, "Yeah, after that, Jonesy, the car decides where it's going to finish." So in lower formulas, you can get there, but when you're in the higher formulas, it's down to money, really, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's a good friend called Scott Aitchison, and he started off on motorbikes doing the Baja. He did it for years and years, and then went from that into cars, and he went from Formula 4 to IndyCar in 5 years, and then walked away from it.
wow,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah. But he
Just
still does. He still does a bit of Baja, but now in cars rather than bikes.
yeah. But you know, and that's the thing. I mean, you can only get to a certain point before the wallet takes over, and unfortunately, that's always been the case. But you kind of stepped away from racing for a while, didn't you? I mean, for like family reasons, and I guess.
You're going to have to excuse me for a minute because I'm going to get the charger just in
Oh
case
yeah,
it does.
no problem at all. No problem. This is great. We are just winding down, folks. So we've got a few little bits that we're going to cover. Karl's post racing stuff, and then a few fun questions. So do stick with us. But thank you everyone for the questions and the comments. It's been fantastic. Great to hear from some of the drivers from the time as well, and from Jason Minshaw. We always like hearing from Jason. He said the Volvo Super Tourer is great, but the M3 is so special. Both correct on both, Jason, but you would say that because you own one of the Volvos. But hope to see you at the Super Touring. Right, filled the gap. Yeah, you basically stepped away, didn't you, from the racing side, family reasons, for a number of years.
Well, I walked away from racing because I knew what my strengths and weaknesses were. I felt I was strong enough on the track, not strong enough off the track. I was no good at pulling deals, or I've only ever tested a couple of cars. I tested the Works BMW once, tested DTM BMW out in Germany. Those are probably only 2 tests I ever had in Works cars. So yeah, I knew what my weakness was. So Tina wanted children. I said, I'm not having children while I'm racing. So I decided to stop racing and start a family. But I did get offered a free drive with Kevin Clark because he saw me struggling in Eurocars. We were racing against each other, and he offered me this drive. And I said, no, I don't want to do it, Kevin. And no regrets at all. And it went to one of the guys we used to work with at Brands Hatch at the school. So I was happy for him, Shane Bland. But recently he told me, the sponsor was throwing so much money at these cars, and they were going to go touring cars. But the guy got moved to Europe, so it didn't happen. I would have been devastated then if I turned that drive down and they were going touring cars. So you never know, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Shouldn't just walk away. I guess, but I had my reasons to.
Yeah, of course. And it's a very quick question from Jerry, from Jerry Mine. He says, I'm sure Jason Minshaw was a mechanic on my RS 500 for a while. Jason, can you confirm that or not? Because that would be a cool little story if it was. So you went away, and obviously you started a family. Did the kids ever sort of express an interest in getting involved in racing?
Yeah, Scott not so much, but Ryan, the youngest one, definitely, and he had the talent to do it. He was naturally gifted, I think. First time I took them karting, Scott had been 2 or 3 times, but Ryan hadn't. On a nursery track at Bayford Meadows, and they were pipping each other by about a tenth. He came out the hairpin on full opposite lock without spinning it. I got a picture of him, which is unbelievable. And then he goes on the large track and he's 3 seconds quicker than Scott. And Scott had been to Buckmore and done a few bits. And he was drifting and I was going, Ryan, how come you're not spinning? And I couldn't get it out of him. These carts were doing like 45 mile an hour or something. And he's drifting all the time. And 2 weeks later, he said, well, it's easy. It's just like PlayStation, lift off and it will drift. And he was like, I can't remember, was he 4.5 or 5 or something at the time? It's nuts.
Wow. That's amazing that you've picked it up
from. I talked him out of it because, you know, times have changed so much from when I did it. You could do it with no money or little money, but now it's impossible, isn't it? You know,
yeah,
I told him focus on his job or his career and do it as a bit of fun if you want to.
Yeah, if it comes that you can do it as you say, as a bit of fun with some spare cash, then yeah, by all means. Before we move on to coming back to the racing, Pat Blakeney, he's just interesting comment here. Says, "Don't blame me for the oak tree." Is that something we should know about? He says, don't give away all the Thruxton secrets or blame me for the oak tree. I'm intrigued by that now.
Well, Pat might blush about that one if I told you that story. Yeah, the oak tree at Noble, he says it's not an oak tree anyway, but I'm sure it was. I used to use that as a reference point coming out of the complex and so on, and it was just so sad to see that tree missing. Yeah,
I remember it being there. Yeah, don't blame it for the oak tree. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Pat. But yeah, I mean, you came back racing a number of years later after you had stepped away. Obviously, the kids have kind of grown up and you've got a bit more time for yourself. Was it like an itch that you wanted to scratch, you know, just to get back racing in some form?
Well, my friend Mark Coles was racing Porsche, so I went to a few races with him. I thought, yeah, I'd like to have another go at this. And as the kids were older, they wanted their own independence. So I thought, yeah, I wouldn't mind having another crack at it. But as I said, I'm hopeless at selling myself. A good friend of mine asked me, would I like to do Tour Auto in a 275 GTB, Ivor Dunbar? And I went, yeah, okay. He said, do you fancy coming up to Brighton, have a go at it? I didn't even know what one was. And I thought, oh my God, I got out of this car. It's the first time I'd driven an old historic car like that. I got out the car, went, oh my God, it was amazing. I drove his Enzo the same day. And I'd known him 10 years. That was 10 years ago now, just gone. And I said, that I can't put it into words, the expression and the feeling, emotion and attachment to the 275 GTB, but the Enzo didn't do nothing for me at all. Really? He said, did I turn the traction off? I went, no. He said, if I turned the traction off, I would have had a different view of the car. But that when we did Tour Auto at Le Mans, I think was doing 140 down the straight, that V12 4-cam, the noise of the engines was sublime. Yeah.
It's a proper noise. Oh.
So that was my first taste, and Kevin Clark got me a drive in the BMW at Alton in the, I can't remember the name of the racing though, but we finished second in that. So you know, he was a 10th quicker than me around Alton, and so I hadn't driven for a while, so I was chuffed with that.
Yeah, to be that close. So,
at least I could still do it.
Yeah, fantastic.
But then it took me ages and ages to get into it. And then unfortunately, my good friend Neil Cunningham, when he was really ill, he put me in touch with Bob Pepper. I drove a Mustang a couple of times, but they down in Cornwall and they don't want to travel anymore. No. And he also put me in touch with Ben Eastick. So got introduced to Ben, and I've been driving his Jaguar D type for about 6 years or so now.
Which is an absolutely gorgeous machine, isn't it?
I never know which is better, the RS500 or the Jaguar D type, and I never celebrate birthdays and things like that. But on my 60th, that year at the Silverstone Classic, I drove a Lotus Cortina, the D type, and Paul Linfoot's Louis RS500.
Oh, wow.
But the Louis, so I thought this day is going to tell me which is the best. But the Louis car played up that weekend, so I still don't know. And maybe it's better. I don't want to know because they're both phenomenal cars and very iconic cars and incredibly special and very privileged to drive cars like that.
Oh, I mean, 3 amazing machines. I mean, but you said like the D-Type versus the RS500. I mean, that's a heck of a coin toss, isn't it? That's
they're both pretty challenging cars to drive, and they constantly want to bite your backside. So that's the thrill of trying to tame them and being quick in them.
Andrew Edwards, perhaps we can get Karl in an RS500 at the Goodwood Festival of Speed. Now, there is a suggestion. I think a lot of the touring car lot would love to see that again. You kind of mentioned that Paul Linfoot's got your old car. If you can get it all.
Yeah, well, going back a little, Paul asked me to do the members meeting. Yeah. I don't know, it was 2018, 19, I can't remember now. But I hadn't driven a car like that for 30 years. And I thought, oh my God, just as soon as he sat in, it felt familiar and that. But I turned the boost down before going out because it was cold. And I thought I don't want to spin off or anything. And I was trying to get it sideways through the chicane and I couldn't get the back out. I was thinking, what's wrong with it? I forgot to turn the boost back up, didn't I? So that was frustrating. About 6 months or 4 or 5 months later, he rings me up one day and he said, I'm on my way to Silverstone. Do you fancy coming up and having a go in the RS500? There's a media day for the Silverstone Classic. Yeah. So I said, I'm on my way, jump in my car, drive all the way up to Silverstone.
He's literally just put that in the comments. He's just put that in there. So, yeah.
So I turned the boost, normal boost, whatever it runs, and oh, yeah, my God, it was awesome. I did 4 laps and came in and Paul goes, what's wrong with the car? What's wrong with the car? I said, there's nothing wrong with the car. That was absolute, because he thought there was something wrong with it because I came in early. I said, nothing at all. That was absolutely fantastic. Perfect. I said, that'll do me. Yeah, so all the way up to Silverstone for 4 laps, but they were very special 4 laps. And it was, fantastic. I wish I had that car back in the day, that's for sure.
Yeah. That would have been something else. I mean, you sent me a couple of photos of you driving the car, and I almost wanted to like jump into the picture because it just looks so much fun. Awesome. If anyone wants to give me a passenger ride, I'd be more than happy to sit and laugh and scream next year. But yeah, what a machine! Absolutely fantastic.
But the D-Type as well, I think I told you, we do the RAC Woodcote Trophy in it, and Ben and I actually won it in 2019. So it's good to know we can still do it.
Yeah,
and that is, I feel ever so grateful for Ben for giving me the opportunity to drive alongside him because it's an incredibly special and valuable car, and absolutely love it's just a joy to drive.
And I think it's the kind of car that if you're going to entrust someone to drive it, you have to know they're going to do it right and properly. And obviously, he feels that's you, rightly so. Fantastic. I mean, I drove an E-Type last Friday up at Bicester Heritage, and I know it's not as tuned and souped up and refined as your one, but I'd always wanted to drive one. And I went around the short track round there, and you can't help but smile. It's just something about an old Jag. It's fantastic.
Well, they're real. They're real, aren't they? You feel the attachment and emotion and the noise and everything. Yeah. They're just all historics and classics are just a joy to drive.
And they still handle nicely, but you've got to wrestle with it a little bit, and it leans and it rolls, and it's fantastic. I also drove an Aerial Atom, so I'm surprised I've still got a face because those things are ridiculous. Honestly, absolutely brilliant. But yeah,
I hope you got it sideways.
No comment. Well, the thing is, I'm going to hold my hand up here just for 10 seconds. If you've been to Bicester Heritage, you've got a little sort of left-right bit and then a big right-hander at the end. Then you blast back down the straight, down one of the old runways. And then you're meant to turn right and start your lap again. But the pedals are really close together, and I had a pair of trainers on, and I've gone to hit the brakes, because I've I've got my right foot down, thumping down this straight, you know, and laughing my head off because I'm doing about 600 miles an hour or something. Absolutely brilliant. And the instructor does that, you know, to say, right, stamp on the brakes. And I stamp on it, but the edge of my foot catches the accelerator. So I'm not slowing down enough. So I've turned it right, moved onto the brakes fully, locked up both front wheels, and then eased off, turned in, and as it's bit again, the back's kicked out. And I thought, I wish there was someone videoing that, because that must have looked brilliant. Complete fluke, but it must have looked fun. Oh, and another comment here. Paul Linford. Karl will drive his old Duckham's car again when I have restored it, and tell him no excuses now, as it's a better car. There you go.
Yeah, and I feel ever so grateful for Paul for purchasing that car, because it was in Italy for 30 years, and he tried to secure it 2 or 3 times before, it didn't come off, but he didn't give up, and yeah, so it's been back with Paul about 18 months or so now. So definitely looking forward to driving the old Duckham's RS500 again. And yes, I know it's got some far better bits on it, so it should be really good.
Excellent. And if someone can video that or photograph it or something, I think we'd all be very grateful, because it'd be great to see. And for those of you who don't know, Paul Linford is literally Mr. RS500. He does some incredible work on some of our favourite cars. Top man from what I can gather. I've never met him, but
just incredibly detailed and fabulous engineering and fabrication on the cars. Yeah, definitely very, very talented on the restoration and preparation side of them.
Yeah, hugely well respected, rightly so. Thumbs up from Tim Marshall in the comments. We like that.
And a good bloke too.
Well, we've got to put that in. I mean, I don't know. I've never met him, but I'm more than happy to take your word for it. Everyone says that about him. So I remember Graham Good said the same thing. Rob Gravitt said the same thing. So glowing references all around for Paul. Good man. Just a couple of things that we spoke about, just very quickly. You do a bit of like private driver coaching as well, and you know, which is obviously keeps your eye in and stuff. But something you told me was about when you drive your dad around. He always tells you to slow down, doesn't he?
That miserable bastard. He's 89 and he's still telling me to slow down. Even when I'm doing 35, that's it. Actually, I'll take him out today. He's never liked speed. Yeah, when I first had a moped, he took it off me 4 times, I think, for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and a month. I had to walk back and forth to work. So yeah, he's not into his speed.
Yeah. Love it. Love that. Jason Minshaw, don't big Linford up too much. We'll never hear the end of it. That's over to you guys. I can let you enjoy that one. There you go. Set up. Someone did mention about we discussed it, about the antics at the racing school and the race school high class and things like that. Just very quickly, is there anything that can be repeated?
Well, there was an amazing group of drivers there back in the day. There was Russell Ingall, Marcus Ambrose, I think Paul Radishes might have been there for a while. But some close friends of mine, best friends really, Thomas Mazzera, Gary Ailes, and we had Chris Goodwin, Dave Germain. I can't tell you Dave Germain's story, but I'll tell you what we used to do is on a regular basis, and this went on for years, we'd actually, the pupils would drive and we assess them, and then we had to take them for a hot lap. But most times we'd have about 6 or 7 cars go out together, and we're supposed to do 1 hot lap. It would be like a 5 or 6 lap race. Absolute contact, pushing, shoving with the guests in the passenger seat. You can imagine what their thoughts must have been. And also we'd also get them to race as well. So we'd guide them from the passenger seat.
Wow.
So we'd get the pupils racing each other. Really bad. Thank God there's health and safety these days.
Drawn a line under it. That's the kind of track day I'd like. I'd love a bit of that. I'd be all over it.
Times have changed. They all changed when they changed cars from the Fiestas to the Audi TTs or BMWs or something. So then there was no contact.
You've got to be a bit more careful, a bit more money involved. Yeah. Just seen a comment from Paul Linfoot. I can't repeat that one. Firstly, just one more thing before we get on some fun questions, just to wrap up. It's been 2 hours. It's flown by.
You said about the coaching.
Yeah, coaching. I've
yes.
had a couple of messages from people saying, "Oh, I've been lucky enough to do some, to be taken around as either a passenger or as a driver, or being coached by you," and they've all spoke incredibly highly of you. You said you're absolutely brilliant at it, which I don't doubt for one moment.
I enjoy it. I thoroughly enjoy it. I look after some guys in the Saxo Championship, the youngsters. Jacob Baldry, I looked after him last year. Going to be looking after Oliver Kerr soon. He's a family friend. This guy used to know his grandfather 40 years ago. He was friendly with Jackie back at France. And lovely kid is Oliver Cottam, and he's just racing TCRs. He's only 60. Yeah, so I think he'll go a long way. He's very talented. But I work with a couple of teams, TTP Performance, Malk, look after his drivers, and Bernard Dolan. He's another great team, and I'd work with them, with their drivers. So, yeah, absolutely, thoroughly enjoy it. And when Steve's, he was in business when he had a BMW dealership, his partner, Toby Partridge, and, I'm guessing he's in his early 50s, but he's done fantastically. And another good championship is that BMW 116 championship, and now they got the 120 series, and work with Dave Lampitt and Louis Woodrow. Great. Some of these, I think people are as important as the racing. When you work with these type of people and see how they operate and how they work, it's just fantastic. I enjoy it as much as racing myself. I thoroughly enjoy it.
That's fantastic, and I'm sure everyone appreciates your help, your input, and your experience and everything. And I'm only really familiar with Oliver Cottam, obviously through the TCR series, but he is talented young lad. I saw him at the media day, and it was wet, and he was throwing some laps in, and I got taken round by one of the other drivers, and Oliver's name came up saying that he's very good in the wet, and I guess we know where he gets it from.
I didn't actually coach him. Ray Grimes coached him, but I've worked alongside him, and he's very, very talented.
Yeah, very, very good. One more thing before we get on to the little fun questions at the end before we always finish up with. Congratulations, you're a BRDC member in the last couple of years. Finally. There's a lot of people you mentioned it off air. There's a lot of people that have been, pushing for you to be a member. I thought you already were, to be honest. I remember when I announced it, I tagged the BRDC in it, thinking you'd been a member for about 30 years. I had no idea.
No, I was very pleased for Steve and Soper, of course, and Dario Franchitti that proposed me. So, yeah, really, really honoured to be a BRDC member finally.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic, and very well deserved as well. Just shout out to Dario. Obviously, he's going to be busy next couple of weeks at the Indy 500, but doesn't quite get the credit he deserves, I think, from certainly the F1 kind of crowd, because he never did F1, but what a racer. Whoa.
Yeah, just definitely. What he's achieved. Amazing what he's achieved, isn't it?
Yeah, multiple Indy 500 winner, multiple IndyCar champion. Yeah, fantastic.
And a genuinely top bloke as well. Lovely, lovely guy.
Yeah, from what I can gather, yeah, absolutely. Yes. And he does a lot of work with some fella called Gordon Murray, who's done something in motorsport once or twice. But, that's another story. Yeah, terrific stuff. Right, okay. We always end up on these little fun questions, little run-throughs and fun things. I think you've already answered a couple of them, but we're going to just go over them again. Did you have a favourite driver when you were growing up? Obviously, the age that I am, I had Ayrton and Nigel Mansell in F1, and
but you name more than one. I'll have to name more than one.
Yeah, you can have. I've got loads in IndyCar as well. I think we do them on here, which is incredible. But go on, let's have a couple.
obviously Tom Price, because of it was him that I never got to meet Tom, but it was him that gave me the drive and passion to chase this dream of
Yeah.
being a race driver.
Because he's the only Welshman to score a point, lead a lap, and stuff in F1, isn't he? And
Yeah.
very, very tragic circumstances around his death, as we all know. Not going to go into it, but not footage you want to see. But yeah, really, really, really sad.
Yeah, tragic. I'd have to say 76 because of Hunt and Lauda was my guy I wanted to do, and after the accident and so on, to come back from that, and yeah, he was a pretty good racer, wasn't he? And definitely one of my heroes. But also Villeneuve, got to see Villeneuve race quite a few times. I saw him at Monaco, and even on the slowing down lap, he was sliding it up against the barrier. We were about 3 doors up from Tip Top's bar, coming up with Casino Square.
Wow.
And also, when I was in the pits at Brands, going back to the pits at Brands, often they'd have people testing, and Scheckter and Villeneuve were testing the Ferraris every day. So I didn't get much work done that day, that's for sure.
I'm not surprised. Wow.
So yeah, it was good mixing with these people back then. There's so many Formula One drivers who'd be there, and you'd be hanging out with them. And it's hard to believe today, McLaren were testing it. And Teddy Mayer said, can I wheel the McLaren in? Can we keep it in your garage tonight? I went, yeah, sure. As long as what's the chances of me having to go in it tomorrow? And he said, about the same chances as me going to the moon. But can you believe that? They just say, can I wheel the Formula One in your garage? Leave it there tonight.
Again, the things that wouldn't happen today. Dear me. Yeah. But must admit, I'm like Jody Schlecter's quite local to me, just down at Laverstoke Farm. And I'm trying to get him on here, and I'm trying. Takes a lot of effort, but yeah, I mean, like Scheckter, Villeneuve, and Lauda. I mean, it's not bad, is it? And you mentioned about the Hunt Lauda thing. I had Freddie on here for a chat last year, and I mean, it's amazing if you close your eyes and listen to Freddie Hunt talking. It's James. It's a little bit terrifying.
Quite similar too, don't they?
They do. They got the hair and the yeah. Good guys, great guys. Let's have a look. Okay, this is okay. 2-part question: the favorite car you raced before your break, and the favorite car you've raced since you've come back.
So it'd have to be the RS 500 and the Jaguar D-Type.
I thought that might be coming. Yeah. Yeah, just two fantastic.
But you didn't ask me which car I'd really like to drive.
Let's add that in then.
The Auto Union.
Oh, yes. The Auto Union. We spoke about that, didn't we? Yeah.
So from a young lad until today, that one car would dearly love to drive. Just think of the horsepower, the torque, the mechanical, big, heavy mechanical. Just think of Rosmeyer, phenomenal, unbelievable what they did with those cars.
But that would have been amazing. I mean, we go back to to eras of racing, and you think how different it must have been, and how difficult, and especially with the zero safety almost. And as you say, that must have been unreal to drive that thing. I think I saw one at Bewley, and I couldn't take my eyes off it for about 15 minutes. I was quite young, and I saw it, and it's just a fabulous machine, isn't it? Oh, brilliant. Okay, let's have a look. Your favourite circuit to race at? I think you may have answered that one.
No, I didn't, because I mentioned the favourite in the UK. Mugello is my favourite circuit.
Is it? I think you might be the first person to say that.
It's a tight one between Mugello and Portimao, but I would say Mugello. Yeah.
Oh, there's two circuits that are great, but they've got character. You know, you get so many of these circuits now that are just sort of slapped in the middle of a field or a desert, and there's nothing to them. But circuits built into the hillside and things like that, fantastic.
I raced the RS 500 around there because we sold it to Elio Gotti, and they asked me to go out there and do do the race in it. Yeah, first race in it.
Wow. But that was an experience.
Yeah, definitely, especially on there.
Wow. Excellent circuit. Excuse me. Okay. Two more. Okay. Is there a series that you would have liked, you would have liked to have had a go in? I mean, obviously, whether it be like F1 or IndyCar or throwing a big NASCAR thing around or prototypes, Le Mans, anything like that? Is there anything that would be like an ultimate bucket list item?
Back in the day, you mean?
Yeah, go on. Yeah, back in the day, yeah. Or now. Either or.
No, I'd love to have done F1. Of course, everybody's dream was F1. But saying that, I went to the Racing for Britain. They had a meeting in London, and there's about 100 drivers there. I turned up late because I couldn't bloody find my way around London. And I wasn't that late, but a little late, and they made a big point of being on time. But Eddie Irvine was sat next to me, and Eddie and I were cracking up all day. But one of the biggest things was they said, anybody here wants to be a Formula One driver? All his hands went up. And they said, anybody here doesn't want to be a Formula One driver? It was only me that put my hand up because I wanted to make a living out of touring cars or sports cars. Yeah. But wasn't to be.
No, not to be. Sadly not. Sorry, screen just gone off. Okay, the final question. I've always asked this to everyone, and there's very few that can give me just one answer. I mean, you've raced against many fantastic drivers in all the series, and even in the historics and touring cars and everything else. I mean, is there one that kind of stands out above anyone else as being the best? Now, be aware that Jerry Marnie's watching. So,
racing hard, you mean against each other, or
hard racing and who can do something with a car that no one else could? If there's a couple of categories there.
I just think racing hard with somebody and you can push and shove and lean without you can trust them 100%. I would say Johnny Dumfries. He'd put the nose on the gearbox, lift your gearbox up and rub wheels, but that's in Formula Fords even, and you can trust him 100%.
Love that. That. It's nice to get Johnny Dumfries mentioned, because again, a lot of people only really know him from F1, and he was perhaps overshadowed by Ayrton in Lotus and stuff, and he never got the credit for what he did because he won at Le Mans and Jaguar and all that. And
won the British F3 Championship, and did he win the European one as well? I can't remember. I think he might have.
He might have done. Yeah, I think he might have done. Yeah, and obviously very, very sadly no longer with us, but yeah, Johnny Dumfries, we like that. That's a lovely answer. Great stuff. I think that's it. I mean, I think that's a very nice way to end. Obviously, with just to have some memories of Johnny. But no, thank you very much, Karl. It's been absolutely brilliant speaking with you. It's flown by. We always say we try and give it a couple of hours. We always go over because we have so much fun. But no, thank you so much for coming on, having a chat. It's been, as I said before, when I spoke to Jerry and Steve and Rob and all the other guys and Graham from the RS 500s, there's a little 7-year-old me is very excited right now. So it's been great speaking with you. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you very much indeed, and thanks for everybody watching and listening. And Jason Minshaw, time for bed. Off you go.
It is 10:30. Come on. But no, I'll just echo what Karl just said. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in. So many comments and great stories, some funny ones, some great questions. I do hope we've covered them all. But thank you, everyone, as always, for tuning in. Very much appreciate your support. And we will catch up with you very, very soon. But thanks once again, Karl. And I'm sure we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you, Rich. And thanks everybody. Cheers. Good night.
Great stuff.